what you doing to this brother? You got my mind, heart, and my soul burning with desire. And the fact that I am giving a church, every bone in my body will give thanks. Now, baby, what do you expect to me? Should I stand in the middle of the road, let something run over me, so that I can get global attention? I want to explain to you, you're a hit on every corner. Gotta confess to you now, what you doing to this brother? You got my mind, heart and my soul burning with desire. And if ever I'm giving a chance, and if all in my body will give thanks, don't let me cry to you. Crying is a sign of weakness. I wouldn't love to know, baby. You do just right for my fitness. I don't want mine just for you, just for you. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 baby.
He's just very good now. He's supposed to start. Thank you, and let's remain standing while I ask Mr. Nathaniel Boyce, Chairman of the St. Michael South Branch of the Democratic Labour Party, to lead us in a word of prayer. Nathaniel?
Thank you. Let us bow our heads. Almighty and everlasting God, thank you. We ask you this evening to give us your support and guidance as we meet as a group, and also give us to help us to nurture each other as we meet here in this community. Give us a clear minds and a peaceful heart. Dear God, we hope that you will not allow any of us to be marked, not just by any first initial of any party, but by your spiritual blood this evening. God, I hope that I can leave some prayers with my comrades here this evening. First, some prayers of protection for those who are coming. Protection in our homes, protection in our schools, protection in our communities, protection across our country. God, I offer some prayers to of transformation. Transformation in our educational system. Transformation within our communities. Transformations in our country that we will see the benefits going forward. God, lastly, I ask you for prayers of restoration. Restoration within our party itself. Restoration within our schools, our communities, that we, as a party, can take forward our people of Barbados as we move closer going into elections. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you very much, brother, for invoking, of course, the presence of the Almighty. Extremely important. And ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to this, which is the final zone meeting of a 10-meeting program that has been organized by the Democratic Labour Party, the Executive and General Council of the party. And certainly these groups must be congratulated on the effort that has been put in to bring these zone meetings to Barbados and bring these zone meetings to our people. We've had this will be our 10th meeting, as I said, and we've tried to spread these meetings all over Barbados. I remember I attended one in Holders Hill in St. James. There was one in Church Village in St. Philip. We had a zone meeting in St. Lucie, of course. We had one in My Lord's Hill, which is just over the other side of St. Michael. The Bush Bar, that's Deacon's area. I know that area fairly well. White Rabbit is St. George, St. Thomas, Arthur's Seat, that's it. That's where that one was held. We had last week, we were at Dighton Griffith. I think we had a strong meeting at Dighton Griffith last week. That was the Christchurch East branches, a strong meeting, and I enjoyed that meeting very, very much. Waterford, I think that was one of the early ones. Down in St. Michael, Central that would be. And as I said today, we are here in Chelston, which is St. Michael South, of course, but bordering on St. Michael South East, bordering on Christchurch West, the city, of course, which is just over the road, and St. Michael South Central, of course. And of course, Barbados is a small place. So when we have our meetings, and especially when we get the opportunity to stream our meetings, everybody who wants to hear gets to hear the message of the Democratic Labour Party. I'm an old stager now in the Democratic Labour Party, and I certainly have indicated to the President and the General Secretary that I am willing and happy to continue serving. I am not willing or happy to continue being a candidate. I am willing and happy to help anyone who asks for my help, because I believe we all can add and contribute to the strength of our colleagues and continue to make this party a very important choice that Barbadians can make. We have a lot of work to do, and the more we read and observe what's happening in Barbados, we recognize how urgent that work is. And I really want to congratulate the team of speakers on the Democratic Labour Party ticket who have been able to demonstrate that the Barbados Labour Party leadership in this country is not as trusted as it should be. And there are plenty holes in terms of the programs which we are seeing being foisted on the people of Barbados, many of which are upturned even before they get started. I went into Oyston only last Thursday looking for this electronic vehicle registration thing that you're supposed to do. Not the one with the electric car. I did that as a legal requirement for TAMIS, or the people that you pay taxes to. I paid my taxes. But the electronic vehicle registration is the one where they're supposed to be able to log into your car when they put up those cameras. And Morgan would know about it. They probably help organize it, the police and them, to track people. And indeed, it's a good idea if you can get it working. But the trouble with the Barbados Labour Party is to get these things working. Because unfortunately, even yesterday, we heard of the unfortunate hit-and-run incident in Rice's in St. Philip, and these are things which this country cannot bear. We have to be able to take care of these situations and to remember that the grieving families need to have closure in these unfortunate circumstances. And we pray for that family, for that young lady who was killed yesterday. So we've been able, as I said, to bring messages to the people of Barbados. And most recently, of course, we've had the situation with the Juvenile Act, a bill, which was supposed to have been hurried through Parliament into the Senate Child Protection Bill. That's right. Thank you, Adrian. And the work of Ms. Dujon, who is here with us, Tyra Trotman, who I don't see yet, but I'm sure if not here, will be listening, Faith Greaves, Michael Lashley, the President, Ronnie Yearwood, all of the speakers, they were able to pull back the Minister of People Empowerment, I think that's what he calls himself, and Elder Affairs. And right now the bill is supposed to be in committee. So when you hear that, people, you know that you may not hear about it again, not in a hurry at least. They will now look for ways to fix that and to try to listen to the people. In other words, do what Ms. Dujon and Tyra and the others who spoke about it have been saying. Talk with the people first. Let's have a conversation in Barbados about these policies so we can be part of the change that is proposed. Again, we have foisted on us now a 19-page document called the Education Reform Bill. And the more I listen to the commentators on that bill, it would seem as if the last thing we really want is this kind of crazy reform being proposed by the head of the Education Ministry in Barbados at this time. Whenever you're going to look at change, I always learn that you would first of all examine the virtues of what you have or what you have existing. And most people I talk to tell me that the Barbados education system is a very good system. The last thing you want to do with it is to dismantle it willy-nilly. Listen to me carefully. And to try and chop and change to match international standards which have proven to be extremely unsuccessful. And when I listen, for instance, to a little bit of brass tacks today, they call it brass tacks on Sunday still? Right, brass tacks today. Again, the commentators are making it very clear that in truth, in fact, we need to find out what it is we're trying to drive at. I heard Ronald speak last week, Ronald Jones, that is our former Minister of Education, and he made a very important point. Do we, but Ronald always look good, friend? Oh, looking better. Oh, well, I agree with that. Do we really, should we really be first looking at how can we get these young children around Barbados safely in large enough numbers and in a timely fashion so that they can arrive at school wherever it is in a condition where they are ready to accept training and nurturing, and not confused by noises and music and scary driving and that kind of thing. So do we really not want to start with seeing what we can do to make getting around Barbados easier for our children and for all of us? Because truth be told, unless you have your own transport, it is extremely challenging to get around Barbados still, and it should not be so. And every day we observe, it seems as though there's less and less control. There seems to be less control now of what's going on our streets than when it was Minister of Transport 10 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago. So the more things change, the more worse they become, it would seem. So Mia Motley and her band, I didn't say that, but Mia Motley and her band is actually moving around Barbados, pretending to fool the people with a lot of nonsense, and every day a new idea comes up, even before you finish the one you started last week. And of course, they got into a big parliamentary reform. Now I was listening for that ever since, because I never forget, as leader of government business in the House of Assembly, you have a responsibility. And one of your responsibilities is to make sure that the program of your government is being completed in a timely fashion without breaking the law. So occasionally you would have to bring a bill to the House of Assembly, which was probably only circulated the evening before, because of the timing and what programs you had. I remember every time we found ourselves in that situation, Miss Bradshaw would make a big, long, stinking song and dance and get up and play She Walking Out. Well, it didn't make much difference if she walked out anyhow, because she didn't make any contribution. She still ain't making no contribution. But we'll deal with her another time. But now she's leader of government business, I would like her to tell the people of Barbados how many bills she had to deal with in the House of Assembly the same day she brought them to the attention of the members of the House of Assembly. But you see, they have 30 puppets in there. So they just follow the leader. They just follow the leader. There is no one, as a matter of fact, if you get them by themselves and ask them quietly, how is it, they tell you they are sick and tired of talking to each other. They are fed up with talking to each other because nobody listens. So they're getting up and talking to 29 colleagues. And they would be a happy political organization when we start to win some seats in Barbados again and provide a proper government and a strong voice for the people of Barbados. So this has to be our aim, and that is the objective of these meetings. And I want to urge the members of the Democratic Labour Party to understand how important this program is of getting our voice together, getting our young members to come out and to participate in these programs and to put the message, getting an opportunity to share our ideas with the public so that we can get some feedback even as we prepare to be a government again. We can start to get feedback on our ideas so that we can make sure that when our turn comes, we are ready to serve this country. Because it is very serious business, let me tell you, and I know you know that. It is tough work. And the Barbados Labour Party is learning that more and more every day. It's not about what happened between 2015 and 2018 anymore. It's not about what happened the 10 years before 2018 or what happened at COVID. It is about what are you doing today with the people of Barbados, for the people of Barbados. Where are our taxes going? What is happening with the health care of our country? Why new taxes on salt now? rather than looking as been suggested from this platform, that we start to look at reducing the cost of healthy food. We look at ways of reducing the cost of healthy food. Yes, we introduced the sugar tax, a 10% tax, but when you have business people telling you that we ain't sure if that make any difference, bro, the people still buying the Cokes and the fruities and the red juices and whatever. If they can't get them, they buy them the fruit juices on the street, which having a nice dose of sugar. I tell you, I try them occasionally. A nice dose of sugar. So we got to look at being healthy. We got to, maybe I'll get an opportunity to talk a little bit about health one of these days, but we got to look at programs which strengthen our community care, which help to get to our sick people where they are. Not only at the polyclinics, where they have long waits, right, Miss Blackett? Where they can have fairly long waits, even in the best of times, because it is crowded. But we could strengthen our community nursing. So we knock on doors, and we go in and see Miss Alda, and we go in and see old man John Boyce, how you doing, how that leg? You know what I mean? Because that is where we can strengthen. It's a tough program. We've had it before, but I get the distinct impression that it has waned considerably. That is the community care. So we need to look at strengthening those programs. And these are the kind of ideas which will come from this platform from time to time as we continue our program. We're gonna, as I said, we're ending the zone meetings today, but don't think we're going silent. We're ending these to start something else. And I'm sure when the executive have an opportunity, they will share with you and share with the people of Barbados where we're going. We still got to select and name our candidates, but again, it's not my duty to go there, because that time will come, and we need to put that exciting slate of candidates who are joining with the Democratic Labour Party out there, so the people of Barbados can start to examine them and to make their minds up in respect to where we will be whenever an election is called. And rest assured, it will be called soon, because that woman in charge is becoming more and more confused every day with the bunch of people she have around her. She is getting more and more confused with that bunch of people around her who seem not to be able to do nothing. Once she get in the airplane, it's all hell and misery in Barbados. And she in the airplane every week. You know that. So every week we in trouble. And then she come back and haul out a few of them, brass them up, because that's her style. Don't fool yourself. We've been told that, and we know it, because we talk to some of them. But they don't have the guts. They don't have the guts. Well, I believe they have balls. I think they have balls. I think. You want to look at it to get me in trouble. I'm not known for getting a lot of trouble on the platform, so I will not follow the multitude. I will not follow the multitude. That's all. Not to do evil, but I will not follow the multitude. I just try and stay the old-time John Boyce that I always was. You know what I mean? So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of exciting work to do. And we've got to make sure, as I said, that these new candidates that we are bringing forward have the opportunity to put their message out to the Barbadian public. And this evening's meeting is one such opportunity. We've had one change in terms of the speakers, in that Mr. Ryan Walters is not feeling well. I wish him well, though. I hope he feels better soon. But he's not feeling well, and he cannot attend the meeting as he promised he would have. I know he was at the speakers meeting on Friday afternoon. So, but he said something happened this afternoon, and he's not feeling well. Well, you just come and you start. You hear that already? So we continue, because the program will not be halted. The program is going forward. We are getting stronger and better every day. And we have to be ready, as I say, for when that call is made and that bell is rung, to send out candidates in the fields in Barbados to do the bidding of the Democratic Labour Party and improve the lot of Barbadians. So our first speaker this evening is Miss Felicia Dujon. Miss Dujon would have spoken at the meeting where we talked about the Children's Child Protection Bill, and she would have, as they say, undressed the Minister of Elder Care and open a can of worms, as they say. Felicia is a human rights expert in various capacities with civil and governmental organizations, and she has already proven her worth as a public speaker, and she really knows what she's about, and we are happy to welcome Felicia and to welcome her into the arms of the Democratic Labour Party. So join me in welcoming Felicia to this podium now. Thank you.
That's good, yeah. Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It works. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Good evening, comrades. And I hope everyone is doing well. And thank you for inviting me to share some of my thoughts on what has been happening in this country. This evening, I will try my best not to give anybody high blood pressure in Parliament. I will try my best not to allow anyone to get too irrational about issues that affect us in this country. This evening, I would like to address a few matters that was present in the media. And one thing I want to tell us, brothers and sisters, and I've always said that, we need to remain alert. We need to remain alert and be very vigilant as to what this current administration is doing to this country. We have seen a lot of policies, we have seen a lot of laws being legislated, and when we ask questions, we are told to keep quiet. We are bombarded in Parliament. We are told, and in some cases are even called liars. So I want us to, again, be very vigilant, stay focused, and ensure whatever we do, that we are the truth bearers. And we remain the truth bearers for this country, regardless of what they may think or deem us to be. Brothers and sisters, I just want to briefly touch on Mr. Humphrey. You know I can't stop, but I would have to briefly touch on that. And I saw a lot of things in the media. I saw a lot of exposure in the media, and I think they're having a meeting tonight. Well, of course, they should. Because what we are seeing is that there's a lot of misconceptions about this bill, and I again urge the minister, if you do not know the bill, sir, take some time and go through that bill and ensure that you understand that bill. We're not saying that we do not support the bill. What we are saying is that there are fragments and provisions of that bill that will be very problematic for parents. And this is our position. We want to protect parents. We want to protect citizens within this country. We do not want the state, in particular your government, to violate the rights of our citizens. And so it is our democratic right and responsibility to educate persons about what is happening within this country. And it is our responsibility. And as I said before, whether we're in Parliament or not, it is our responsibility. It is our moral responsibility to hold this government accountable at all costs. Okay, so this is our responsibility. For the past few weeks, we have been hearing quite a lot in terms of the education reform, which is what we will be touching on this evening. It is paramount that we speak about education. Why? Because it affects the lives of young persons. It affects the lives of our future generations. And we always speak about the future generation. One of the things that we need to be reminded as brothers and sisters, that the Right Honorable Barrow spoke that equal opportunity should be available for all to achieve their fullest potential. And that's very important. Even many years, 60 years later, that still remains the same. We have to ensure that the opportunities are there for our young persons, brothers and sisters. And again, what we've been seeing, we have been hearing quite a lot about education. We've been hearing quite a lot about educational reform, and it is needed to some extent. Because I was told by Mr. Humphrey that the way that he described me is that I'm a politician at night and a professional at day. So it's not night yet, so I can't be a politician right now. So I'll be the educator and the professional when we think about education of our children. That is very important. Because what we're trying to do is to shift the education paradigm from one point to the other. And the question is, do we have a problem with what is existing? And if we do have a problem, what could we do? But the other thing that is very important, can we afford it? Can we afford the educational reform that we're discussing? Has the Minister of Education informed us if it's possible? Because we may all have ideas. We may all want to change things, and we've been seeing a lot of that with this government. They want to change history. They want to change everything. But we want to ensure whatever you're changing has a positive impact on our youth. We do not want to change something and 2 or 3 years later or a year down the line we have to go back to the drawing book, as we've seen with this government. Everything has to be gone back. We have to go back to the drawing book. We do not want that to happen when it comes to the education of our children. And this evening, I believe most of our fellow brothers and sisters will speak on different aspects of this reform. But my aspect has to deal with children's rights. That fundamental right to education. It is a right that has been given from the time that we ourselves have known each other. It is important that whatever laws that we're drafting, whatever reforms that we're drafting, it does have some impact on the lives of our children. On Thursday, brothers and sisters, there was a WhatsApp message, I think some of you may have seen it, with this young child, this young student laying down on the street after being beaten by her colleagues. Brothers and sisters, our youth are in serious trouble. Our youth are in serious trouble. And if we have not recognized this as yet, then it perhaps will be too late when we recognize what we ought to do. When we can see children brutalizing, violating each other's rights on the street, to the point that not even one of them turn around and help that child, we know that something is wrong. So what I can say to the Minister of Education, what we can say to the Minister of Education, it was very good of you to come to the public and tell us about a bathroom sign and telling us whether it's true or false and calling persons. I will not even use the term. But we know who the untruth bearers are. We know who they are. And we want you to put that same kind of energy in what is necessary for our children. We want you to put that same kind of urgency for the children of Barbados. Because what we're seeing right now, it requires immediate intervention. It requires immediate intervention. Because regardless of if we speak about educational reform and we haven't reformed the minds of our children, we are wasting our money. We are wasting our resources. It is important that when we think about the Barbadian child, the education of a Barbadian child, that we develop the character of our children. That when we develop that character, we also develop that person. Because we're not educating those children for 2 years. We're educating our future citizens. So we must invest in every aspect of their development. So the reform that you're developing, ensure that it takes into consideration the classroom environment, which is very important, the teaching and learning, which is very important, but the holistic child, that student that in a few years will be in the public space and in the public domain, within our workspaces, within our communities. It is important that we think about that person that we want to teach and to bring them where it is necessary. So we cannot think about educational reform if we do not think about reforming or transitioning that individual. It is very important because we're not going to go anywhere. We are not going to go anywhere. We're seeing the increase of violence in school. Have we heard anything about that from the minister? Have we heard anything about that from Madam Minister? What kinds of implementation, what kinds of programs? Of course, we've heard the last minister speaking about bullying programs, but has this had the kind of impact that is necessary? We've heard about the app. There was an app they designed, right? That would have, and it's thousands of dollars that has been spent and invested in those intervention programs. But what has been the impact on the individual student? Brothers and sisters, for those who have children or grandchildren, how does your child feel to go to schools when at times they know violence can explode at any point? When they know that some of the students or fellow students walk with weapons at schools, how do they feel? Where is the minister to speak on security in the schools? Where is the minister to speak on issues that affect our children and how we can help them navigate those problems that exist in the schools? And of course, what's about the teachers? What is about the teachers? How do our teachers feel in those environments that are hostile in some cases? Brothers and sisters, we have to think about all those facets when we think about the education system and think about transforming an entire education system. I did some research as well, and I observed that we have a 4% increase on high school dropouts. Has the minister addressed that matter? Has the minister addressed where are those children? Where are they right now? We understood that the COVID pandemic may have had an impact on those children continuing education. And of course, the economic aspect of our society. What has happened to those children? We have seen the research has shown that children that have dropped out of school, where they lead to criminal behavior. And we tie those kind of delinquent behaviors as well. As I said to you, brothers and sisters, our children are in trouble. So while they play in politics, our children are asking for help in various ways, but no one is listening to them. They're creating policies, they're creating laws and legislations, child protection bills, but they are not dealing with the matters at hand. They're not touching on the research that has been done on high school dropouts in Barbados in the last 2 years. What is happening to those children? And when we see the increase on crimes among young people, we wonder what happened. Where were you? Where are we right now? And how can we help them? Because right now what we're seeing is that everybody is on a political stunt. Everybody is on the public. Before you say something, everybody else is in the media to attempt to refute what you're saying. How can you refute the truth? The truth does not need any justification. It does not need any justification. The truth is the truth. If we share our input and we share our criticisms, what you ought to do is do your homework. Go back to the drawing board and do what is necessary. But what we're seeing is that every time we give a critique, we're told, oh, don't listen to them. They're not telling the truth, but we know who the non-truth bearers are. We're not going to call you liars, but we know who the non-truth bearers are. Your reputation precedes you. So where we are and where we stand is that we ought to do what is necessary. It is our moral responsibility to stand up and to defend the rights of all citizens. Because when you look at it, they are also in the opposition. They're not in government. The average citizen is not in government. They're part of the opposition. And so it is your responsibility, brothers and sisters, those are here and those are looking online and everywhere. Ensure that you do your duty. Your duty as a citizen is to defend your country and your fellow citizens. Never forget that. And never allow anyone to tell you anything different. Because when you build in the society, you take into consideration every citizen. Every citizen, even those that don't support you. So when it comes to the truth, we ought to say the truth even if it's against us. We speak the truth and we ensure that we say what is required of us. So what we're seeing right now is that when we think about the education, we think about in terms of that holistic individual, providing them with the skills that are necessary. Too often we see young persons, either they graduate or they dropped out of school without the prerequisites, not only to enter tertiary education, but even for employment. What are we doing for those individuals? Where is the transition point for those individuals? What is the government hoping to do and hoping to achieve? So whether you spend all that time discussing a bathroom sign, which we'll get to the bottom of it sooner or later, we want you to ensure that we want to show the transition from one paradigm to the other, because you're taking us from one educational system to another. And of course, we'll understand that lots of research has to be done in terms of that. So one of the things that we observed, that in 2010, a national advisory on the Commission for Education was commissioned. And one of the areas that they noticed, and I'm just giving you that areas, is that they spoke about indiscipline in school and discipline in school, and we understand that. We're dealing with a different generation. We're dealing with a different generation, and that generation may not require the same type of methods of discipline that we had. The same kinds of discipline perhaps may not impact them on the way that we did. I was afraid of lakes. I think I'm still afraid of lakes from my principal. But it's different with that generation. They want to be heard. They want to be seen. So we need to have some kind of dialogue and kind of open communication with them. And this is all part of what we mean by children's rights, that the Minister of Empowerment still have not understood what it means. Because when we speak about children's rights, all Mr. Humphreys is talking about is parents abusing children. Is that all we do? That's not all parents do. We provide guidance. Whether it's moral, whether it's social, we provide guidance to them. And part of the guidance that we ought to do as parents is to provide educational guidance for our children as well. We have to lead the way for them. Something else that I highlighted is that the school living age need to be critically examined. There was a period of time, a 16-year-old, and I think most of you here would remember if a 16-year-old could have left school, was able to enter the job market, was able to be a lot more grounded, but now we're seeing 16-year-olds are still trying to find themselves. So perhaps something that we can do as a government is to increase the school living age. Perhaps we can make the mandatory age to 18, give them the additional assistance, the assistance guidance that they need or required in school. Because what we're saying indirectly, when you're 16, find your own way. But have you seen a 16-year-old lately? Yeah? Many 16-year-olds are still trying to find themselves and trying to navigate the turmoil that some have left for them. So it's something that we need to think very deeply about, whether it's this government or our incoming government, to think whether we can extend the compulsory age to the age of 18. To provide them that additional assistance. And also to equip all schools, not just some schools with certain types of curriculum, but that all schools have access to the same potential of other schools. So it's very important that we look in terms of that. And the quality of education has to be balanced against all crosses of the board. It has to be balanced. We cannot have certain schools having certain types of curriculum or certain schools having types of facilities while others don't. Those types of inequalities will never work. And we will see those kinds of consequences later down the line. So it's very important that when we are thinking of transforming, or when we use that term, the transformation of an educational system, that we do not only think about transforming the school as a structure, or in terms of the curricula, or in terms of teacher training, but the bare fact that what we want to do is to create a global citizen. Like your Prime Minister would say, a global citizen with Bajan roots. But what is Bajan roots? What is Bajan roots? It is our roots. And if you're not grounded in those roots, you're not going to be global. You have to be grounded. And this is what we need to teach our children. We do not even have history in schools. We do not even teach our children history in schools. History is not even part of the curriculum. So how you expect them to be global citizens if they don't even know themselves? If they do not even have the foundation? And brothers and sisters, I'm speaking to you as an educator right now. Because when they come to us, they're already adults. If we do not lay the foundation for them very early, what would happen when we, or some of you that have already retired, or when I retire, they'll have nothing else to them because they'll not be working. So we need to put the provisions for our youth. We need to do what is necessary for them and stop spending that idle time trying to rebut everything everybody says. Before you hear somebody say something, it's like you go paranoid. You can't even contain yourself in parliament. Because the truth, as I said before, when you tell lies and the truth reveals itself, sometimes the conscience makes you check yourself. Okay? So the reality of all of this is that this educational reform, we want the Ministry of Education to know that while we want that reform to do happen, we also want you to invest in the offices of the own ministries. You have the ministry, in particular the office that deals with the reform. We have 2 people working there. How can they do the research, the requirement that is needed? So we're seeing a lot of those haphazard kind of policies are happening because people are not taking the time to do the research and investing in what is necessary. So brothers and sisters, when we speak about educational reform, or what our president will speak a little bit further and the other speakers will speak about a little further, we need to speak primarily about the Barbadian student and where would you like to see that Barbadian student in the next 10 years, the next 20 years, the next 30 years. We cannot just put policies in place and assume it will work, and if it works, it works, if it doesn't, it doesn't. We can't go. What kind of government is that? We need to have more structure, we need to have more research, and we need to ensure that we engage persons like the youth, the parents. And yes, we know that they have some consultation. Of course, for parents who knew how the consultation and teachers, this thing was done last minute. It was done some parents even send their children to school not even knowing that there was no school on that day. But we've seen quite a lot of that has happened in the past because they're too focused on other aspects that is not important. So brothers and sisters, since this is our last discussion, I am reminding you, it is our moral responsibility. It is our civic responsibility to hold this government accountable, and we will not ever, as long as we live, we will never be silent. They can bring who they want. We will not be silent. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
What a solid presentation, colleagues. Give Ms. Dujon a deserving round of applause. And one of the beautiful things about that presentation was that Felicia did not say anything about when the Democratic Labour Party comes to government, we will do this or we will do that. She kept using the words think about. We will engage people in. Because that is how Barbados, leading Barbados, must be looked at in this day and age. You can't just get up and promise people a republic. I am going to make Barbados a republic. And then you got a fella up in, I don't even think he's a lawyer, a fella in St. Patrick's that always say we ain't got no constitution. So I listen to him because he's a member of their party. He's a member of the Labour Party. And he says, well, look at this thing now. The Prime Minister has created a republic and we don't have a constitution, not according to Patrick King. So, I know, I am pretty sure Patrick does not have a LEC. But he may not be alone. He may not be alone in that regard either. But we can't be, as I say, we cannot be distracted. Felicia has begged us not to be distracted. And we have to listen to the new words that are coming out of these young speakers in this party. When we talk about engagement, when we talk about recognizing that the work we do is not about now more than it is about the future. It is about 5, 10, 15 years down the road, what will be happening with our people. That is how our founder leaders thought in 1961. That is why they were able to bring the policies which they brought in 1961. And every government of the Democratic Labour Party since then has followed that process. And we need to prepare this political organization for the opportunity to bring change again to this country, but to bring methodical, to bring considered change, to bring measured change that bears in mind the gains of the past and utilizes those realities to strengthen our programs in the future. So thank you very much, Felicia, for setting the tone for this evening's meeting, which, as she reminded us, is themed around education reform. Education reform, very important. And understanding that while we look into the whole aspect of reform, we do not throw out the baby with the bath water. We think about it, we make sure our people are involved, our teachers, our students, wherever we can, and make sure our parents are involved, very important. Our communities are involved. So, moving on smoothly with our program, I want to introduce our next speaker, another young woman, Miss Faith Greaves. Miss Greaves is an attorney at law for the past 7 years or so. She's only 32 years young, of course. A mother of a 5-year-old sweet boy, I'm told. So maybe one day we'll get to meet him too. She has a passion for youth development and the motto in her life, as long as God is good, I am blessed. With that said, God is always good and I'm always blessed. Bless you, Faith. Come and address the group.
Good evening, all. Yes, that should be good there. Yeah? Well, a little too low, but let's raise it a little bit. Good there. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. You all look very lovely this evening. Oh, thank you. Well, in the Democratic Labour Party, our family is a very beautiful lot. Yes? So birds of a feather flock together. Yes? As you would have heard Mr. Boyce introduce me, my name is Faith Greaves. I am one of the potential candidates for the St. Lucie constituency, if they would have me. And, pardon me? Indeed, indeed. And good mentors throughout the party. Yes? I am an attorney at law by profession, as you would have also heard, but I have a passion for the technical and vocational education. Yes. And what is that, you might ask? Well, it comprises of education, training, and skills development relating to a wide range of occupational fields such as mechanics, construction, welding, engineering, and the like. Now, I believe that we oftentimes take these for granted, and we do not give them the respect deserving. In our beautiful island, we have two main technical and vocational schools, tertiary schools. The Barbados Vocational Training Board and the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute, formerly known as the Polytechnic. Yes? We also have other satellite centers which offer skills training to Barbadians who would want it. But my concern this evening, as we seek to create an educational ecosystem for our modern Barbados, is that currently we are not giving the type of attention to the training and certification to technical and vocational education. Of course, we would have seen the Ministry of Education change its name to include technical and vocational training. It's now called the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. But are we really taking technical and vocational training seriously? We have to ask that question. Because as far back as the days of Errol Barrow and Sir Lloyd Erskine Sandiford, it was recognized that skills-based training and education was critical for the future of Barbados and the empowerment and employment of many Barbadians. And let me tell you, we have excellent, talented vocations and vocational professions in this country. My grandfather was a carpenter, and one of the best carpenters you could ever come across. The door that he built is still standing on my grandmother's house today. Yes? In 2012, the Human Resource Strategy was developed, which sought to bring Caribbean vocational qualifications close to and on par with traditional academic qualifications. And this same forward-thinking strategy was proposed, and it formed the National Qualifications Framework. And I must applaud the former Minister of Education, Ronald Jones, and the former Minister of Labour, Dr. Esther Bayasuku, for seeking to advance such. Now, that is the type of demand-driven education system that the Democratic Labour Party would like to see in modern Barbados. We've started it, but there's still yet much work to be done. But tonight, or this evening rather, I will focus mainly on the institutions and some worrying information that has reached me recently and should cause every one of us in here some cause of concern, some worry. Historically, the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute, which I will refer to as the Polytechnic, because you're more familiar with that, yes? The Polytechnic offered under most of its vocational programs the City and Guilds qualification. The City and Guilds qualification is one of the most popular, globally recognized qualifications. Whether you are becoming an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter, a welder, electrical engineer, any aspect of those vocational areas, that qualifications will serve you well on the global market. Meaning that when you graduated from the said institutions, your qualification did not only carry you with prestige locally, but it gave you a regional and international platform as well. When the Democratic Labour Party came into power in 2008, they discovered that the Barbados Labour Party's administration lost, via the Polytechnic, lost the accreditation, which left some students very dismayed. And I'll tell you why it would leave students dismayed. When I did my research, this qualification was so important that under the Public Service Qualifications Order back in 2001, if you desire to have an occupation in certain government, technical, and vocational jobs, you had to have that certificate. Whether it was as a formal mechanic, as an electrical assistant, as a senior welder, you had to have that qualification. Among others, you had to have that qualification. And even when the 2001 order was replaced by the 2016 order, some of those jobs still required you to have that certification. Now, if it was so important to possess that certification to obtain a government job in those areas, it was equally, and still is equally important, to possess that certification in the private sector. And in speaking to senior members of the private sector in the area of welding and fabrication, I was pained to discover that persons who work in the fields who do not have, or hold, I should say, the City and Guilds qualification, only holding the Polytechnic certification, or only holding the Barbados Vocational Training Board certification, are disadvantaged not only essentially in their earning power, but in their ability to move up the ranks in the field, as certain employers do not hold the view that they are as skilled and valuable as their colleagues who hold the international qualification. Those who found themselves graduating without the City and Guilds qualification often found themselves in apprenticeship positions for 2 and 3 years. Before, that's a long time, before they are recognized as being equally skilled and knowledgeable in their field. Now, some of them are even afraid of applying to the famed establishments as they have seen and witnessed their fellow colleagues rejected or underappreciated. Now, some may argue that we have since introduced the National Vocational Qualifications and the Caribbean Vocational Qualifications, which I mentioned before. Our previous Minister of Education, Mr. Ronald Jones, and our previous Minister of Labour, Dr. Boyce, sought to advance. For those of you who do not know what these are, the National Vocation Qualification basically is a work-related, competence-based qualification certifying that an employee had achieved a national occupational standard of work performance. That is basically what it is. And the Caribbean vocational qualification is similar, but more so based on a regional CARICOM yardstick. But these are not looked upon as favorably as we would like. The International Labour Organization undertook a study in 2020, it was published in 2020, entitled The Caribbean Vocational Qualifications Transition to Employment in CARICOM member states. And observations of that study show that employers throughout CARICOM were dissatisfied with the technical skills and employees with the National Vocational Qualification and the Caribbean Vocational Qualifications. For short, I will call it the NVQ or the CVQ. They observed differences in interpretation of the qualification framework by employers, meaning that employers did not know head or tails what weight to attach to the qualifications. And the expectations were not met in many instances, leading to the employer's dissatisfaction. Now, even though the graduates who had the NVQs and the CVQs appeared technically proficient, compared to their counterparts, they were less favorably viewed in the cognitive dimension, meaning they were less favorably viewed in their theoretical understanding of the particular subject areas. Now, don't get me wrong, please do not quote me as being anti-national qualifications framework. There is a place for such. However, it must be supplemented with the opportunity for the achievement of a global standard. And if we do not supplement, we are stifling our citizens and placing a ceiling on their achievements. We live in a world where the global market, we cannot escape. And why, you might ask, is this a problem? This simply means that we wouldn't be able to send the top boy or the top girl from the Polytechnic anywhere in the Caribbean to say they are holding, anywhere outside of the Caribbean, to say that they are holding any top vocational position in the international world, because the global environment would not be sure if our top boy or top girl knows their stuff. And it is often said that a skilled and flexible workforce is increasingly identified by governments as a key to economic development. So much so that with the emergence of the global market, we now stress that these types of international standards are infiltrated in the bilateral and multilateral trade agreements. They are mandatory. That means that when foreign investors come to our shores and they bring their companies to invest in our infrastructure, if we do not raise our standards, if we do not implement our training and education on an international level, on a global level, they will never consider the little black boy or black girl from Polytechnic to be their electrical engineers, to be their welding and fabrication managers, to be their automotive mechanic managers. They will only look at us as entry-level workers. And we must ourselves ask if that is the future we want for our sons and daughters. We must ask that question. We must ask ourselves if that is the future and reputation that we want for our intelligent and talented Polytechnic graduates and our talented Barbados Vocational Training Board graduates. Now, this lends to a discussion on accreditation. Under the Barbados Accreditation Council, there are 24 registered tertiary education institutions in Barbados. But guess what? Only 3 are recognized or accredited on an international level. These are the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill Open Campus, and the American University of Barbados School of Medicine, none of which specifically cater to the technical vocational professions. Yes. Let me repeat that again. If you did not graduate from one of the 3 of those tertiary institutions, it's a gamble whether or not your qualification will be taken seriously outside of the Caribbean. So what do we do? What will we create? What opportunities will we create for the future of Barbados? I believe, as a strong proponent of competency-based education, that we need to prepare all of our skilled students and workers for the international stage. I believe that we need to raise the stature of skills training, and we need to raise the stature of these jobs in the eyes of everyone, rather than only talk about it when it's convenient for us. I believe that every mechanic, every plumber, tiler, gardener, welder, electrician should be seen as a key component in our economic growth and a major contributor to our society, because they are. We live in houses, we drive our cars, we enter buildings every day, built, crafted, and fixed by such. And I believe that the children should be encouraged to explore their talents and skills and have an outlet to develop them and be qualified and suitably recognized and paid. We have pools of talented, skilled, and vocational professionals in this country who are being deprived of an opportunity to spread their wings beyond these shores. We must create that opportunity for the 19-year-old who is a welder, for the 25-year-old who is a mechanic, for the 35-year-old who wants to be an electrical engineer, and for the 5-year-olds like my son, who oftentimes come home and say, "Mommy, my teacher says I can be anything I want to be." We must provide persons with the opportunity to work and hone their crafts anywhere they choose in the world, not just within our shores and not just within the Caribbean. This can only be done if we put the mechanisms in place for internationally accredited courses and internationally accredited tertiary education facilities as an option for our technical vocational students and young professionals. If we do not take such a bold step, our sons and daughters will not even see the horizon of the ladder to climb. They will not. In addition, to create said opportunities for our Barbadian children would also forge what is the student tourism advancement we need in this country. Imagine if all of our Caribbean counterparts sent their students to Barbados to learn vocational trades. Imagine if they were international students, because we
have built the reputation of being the creme de la creme of technical and vocational education coming to our shores to study. Yes? As we craft an education ecosystem for a modern Barbados, this is no longer an option. It is an absolute necessity. And so I look forward to working with my colleagues and the visionary, committed members of the Democratic Labour Party to make this a reality. As we share and advocate for sensible policies, for sensible decisions, and for sensible actions for the good of our Barbadian people and our Barbadian children. And I want to thank each and every one of you for sitting so attentively this evening. Yes? And for following the reasoning of the brilliant minds of this party. And I look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Thank you.
Well done, Faith. Well done, Miss Faith Greaves. I think that was another sterling presentation. That was another sterling presentation. And it featured a lot of research. You notice? It featured a lot of research. That is so important, and it follows up from where Felicia left off, where the people of Barbados can begin to understand the thinking of the Democratic Labour Party, and indeed the thinking of the new Democratic Labour Party. Don't let us be afraid to say that. This organization is moving forward with new thinking, new ideas, ready to help Barbados out of the trouble that is in. And we're going to need a lot of them, because we are in more and more trouble every day. The proprietor wants me to remind you that he has on sale colors. Let's welcome Dr. Ronnie Yearwood, President of the Democratic Labour Party. Yeah, the proprietor wants me to remind you that he has the thing up on the board now anyhow, ham cutters and fish cakes. The gentleman there in the so well attired in the black suit, he is in charge of dispensing. Dudley Harris is his name, and his wife. And I believe his daughter too, because I heard somebody shout Daddy just to come to the phone, and then quickly realized that they weren't home anymore, they were in a public meeting. Anyway, thank you for having us, Dudley, and we look forward to your beautiful offerings this evening. One of the things, though, that Faith said, she mentioned foreign investment. Foreign investors, away, she said, so I really might take a start going crazy, because I immediately went to George River. And what's going on down there, the MP said he can't get it. He got to recuse himself because he is the Attorney General. Like if he didn't know he was the Attorney General all the time. And then he still claimed that he broke a settlement. Why does that? If you recuse yourself, you still go and broke a settlement. And now he said that the people won't stay with the settlement that he broke. So he don't know what to do no more. And of course, Miss Motley says she did not give the permission. The permission was given by Colonel Duguid. So Mr. Doolittle, Mr. Duguid gave the permit, the work permit, or not the permit, the permission to build, because he's now minister, senior minister in charge of town planning. So Miss Motley is no longer in charge of town planning, so she would like you to believe, and Mr. Duguid is the one in charge. But look, so much exciting things happening in housing that, in a sense, interfere with Michael, but these fellas in housing, there's a fella in there saying he can build 10,000 houses per year, you know. he can build 10,000, and he can. I must admit though, he start with one, and every project start with one. But you know, he take back the one he start with. Huh? So he is now in a state where he is minus a couple of houses, far less the 10,000 target that he aiming for. But I don't take that gentleman seriously anyhow. I think he's a fun-loving minister. And then of course there's some steel houses up there. I didn't say the houses are stolen. There are steel frames to build houses. Up there is 6 Road. Look, I invite all Barbadians to visit. You ain't gonna organize the marriage. Just take a drive to 6 Roads. You can go and do your shopping and hardware and thing first. And then and then go in the factory place, the former IDC place up there by A-class battery. A-class battery man sent me no message, but the people got the metal spread up all over the place there, and about 5 or 6 little fellas, when the morning come, walking about looking for nuts and bolts to tell me. We're looking for the bolt to fit this one. But listen again, listen to this. Read the papers carefully. They say that one of the reasons they can't get the houses, the steel houses, the Chinese houses, that cost Barbados $22 million, that was paid for the importers of these houses. I believe it was a fellow named Patrick Hoyes, and he's a close friend of Santia Bradshaw, by the way, the deputy prime minister. So y'all when you go up there, must ask about them too. When you go up by the steel houses. But you know, they say that they can't get, one of the reasons they can't get the houses put together because the consultants can't get work permits. So who's giving work permit? Ronnie? Ronnie, you sure them work permit? Why do I understand? You are the prime minister of the country. You are the government of the day. You have agreed to buy $22 million in steel houses that nobody knows how to put together. It's like, yeah, you remember you might have had a Lego set when you were a little boy. Some of you and little girls, or little baby dolls that you had to put together, little soldiers, tin soldiers and things that you used to put together, and you had to know where to put each one. So they bring in these fantastic steel houses and now cannot get them put together. Instruction in Chinese, yes. Anyway, I feel that all of us should take a little drive up to 6 Roads, nice, easy, flat road, and have a look at this debacle out there in the industrial estate. It is horrors. So we have to carry on with our meeting, and our next speaker, Melissa Savoury-Gittens. Melissa, of course, is the spokesperson for education for the Democratic Labour Party, and she has been doing a very serious and steady job in this capacity. And she has spoken many times during these zone meetings, and she is here again this evening to make a presentation on the question of education reform, the Democratic Labour Party way. Welcome, Mr. Melissa Savoury-Gittens. How are you?
Good evening, everyone. Somebody just came and whispered to me, you know, the God of the meeting. The God, not the meeting crossed the road, so I'm calling the names. And that we out here can call more liar than lie. But I always talk about my grandmother, and I always hear you get away from a thief, but I ain't sure about a liar. So, you know. But I didn't come here this evening to talk about them and their lives. I came here tonight to get serious, and I have to be serious because of all the things that are happening in education. And this 50-page Y'all got time? Y'all gonna sit down, listen to me? 50 pages? Are you watching this? Okay. So tonight it's time to get serious, and we have to get serious because of our children, my children, your children, your grandchildren, our future of this country is at a critical crossroad. It really is. They say a week in politics is a long time, and trust me, it is a long time. So comrades, I stand here tonight to tell you it's clear to me, I know it is clear to you, that the Ministry of Education, the minister, don't have a single clue of what they're doing. Do not know how to craft a new education ecosystem for a modern Barbados. They don't. Actually, I think they don't have a single clue on anything, according to you, on anything. And this is frightening. I don't know if it's scaring you, but it's indeed scaring me. Now, I think it's 3 years. For 3 years, we've been paying a director and a deputy director on education reform. And what have we gotten for it? Zero. They tell me don't say nothing, so I'm not going to say nothing. What are we getting for it? Zero. All we hear from Dr. Ida May is that we may do this and we may do that. We may launch here and we may launch there, and Ida may or may not. So let me ask you a question. If you hire somebody to build your house, and after 3 years, they didn't get past the foundation, what would you do? But you're going to wait 3 years to decide what to do? I thought of Michael Lashley. Michael, you get a job. Well, you said it all, I don't have to say it, but somebody also told me to be careful what they say about me because they have friends in high places. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want this government to know that people are frustrated. People are calling and complaining. More and more papers, and Michael will tell you when they come, are being dropped off trucks, and more things are being left in my mailbox. And they're all saying the same thing, which is confusion, ad hoc policies, random initiatives, and no communication. And I will say tonight, enough is enough. People in education are tired of being treated like second-class citizens. Leaders in education are being tired of being treated like children. People who care about education are tired of the wake up one morning and we do this, and we wake up the next morning and we decide to do something else. That is not how education works. Proper education reform requires planning, careful thought, communication, and empowerment of leaders, and accountability. An efficient education ecosystem realizes that every aspect of the system is connected. So every part of education is connected to everything else. And so if you tinker with one piece and you don't care about the other, then we are definitely headed for chaos. As a DLP, we understand that education must be seen as a complete system, and that as we move to create a modern Barbados, we must take care to maintain each and every part of that system overall. It has to be taken seriously. It has to generally involve people from the top right the way down to the bottom. And the OECD back in 2012 said the same exact thing. Inappropriate designs and practices of education system allows education inequities and school failure. Based on what I am seeing and hearing, failure is already happening. Some will say it ain't too far off, but it's already happening. So tonight, let me remind you of a few things on behalf of this great party. Because I find that people will say, well, the Democratic Labour Party ain't do nothing, because that's what they keep on hearing for the last couple of years. But we need to remind them of all the things that this great party has done for them. This is the party that provided free education for all in 1962. Introduced school meals in 1963. The party that established the college in 1968 and led to the University of the West Indies. This is the party that opened the Barbados Community College in 1969 and created the first ever audiovisual aids department in that same year. Y'all hearing all the things that this party has done? All right, I can keep going because I think you all need to be reminded of what this party has done. This is a party that have launched teacher training in 1970 and opened the Samuel Jetman Prescott Polytechnic that same year. This party started the Teachers Diploma in Education program in 1973, and under Minister Ronald Jones expanded the amount of training and certification at Erdeston between 2010 and 2017, so that more teachers, hear what I'm saying, more teachers are trained before they enter the classroom. Not after, before. This party is a party that introduced guidance and counseling to all secondary schools when there was none in 1989. And the party that built the last 3 secondary schools. Queen's College, anybody know the rest? Dighton Griffith in Kingsland, and Lester Vaughan in St. Thomas. Many may not know, but it was also in 1992 that this Democratic Labour Party carried out the first steps towards introducing and rationalizing technical and vocational education in Barbados. And that this party both built and repaired more schools in Barbados during its time in government than any post-independence. Nobody like them excited about what he's saying. Y'all excited about what he's saying? Wait, take a thing, okay. This party purposely expanded nursery education with the Maria Holder Trust. And if anybody knows about the Maria Holder Trust, those nursery schools are the best on the island. Top of the line. To give poor parents, who this party look after? The poor. Give poor parents a chance to have the same quality education as others. Now this party also expanded sixth form to give 16 to 18-year-olds a chance to have more formal free education. I ain't done yet. This party started a textbook loan scheme so that poor parents could just pay a few dollars so they can have the resources that their children needed. And this is the party that always believed that principals and teachers should run schools and not some politician or person behind the desk who doesn't have a clue about what's going on in the schools. Now, comrades, this party believes that education is too critical a sector to be tainted and tossed about like some political football or ornament. We believe that it's our job to strengthen and modernize the education sector for the benefits of all Barbadians, and to give the poor and the vulnerable the exact same opportunities to access quality education in a quality system with quality resources. Not like this group that believes talk, green paper, white paper, yellow paper, orange paper, committee this and committee that, and consultants here and consultants there. Toilet paper. When it comes to education, this current government is a government of talkers, a government of optics and fancy phrases. And we know the late enough optics, so we can give you a key so you can live in a house, and we can put that in the paper, and you ain't got no house to live in. They are only interested in looking good and not doing good on the ground. I say to you tonight that our children, our families, our schools, and this country deserve better. So, what does better look like? Because what better look like for me might not be what better look like for you. Let us talk education reform. As I said, it makes no sense discussing what they want to do because they don't even know what they want to do. And research tells us that effective reform requires a number of things. So if you're talking effective reform, not just reform, but effective reform, we have to do a number of things. We must have a clear vision. Have you heard one yet? quality teaching and training, curriculum and standards. Now, in terms of this curriculum and standards, like you, I saw this document that was floating around that was saying August 2022, a document named Education Reform Brainstorming Session, August 2022, that was either too good to be shared professionally with principals and teachers, or it was so poor in its proposals that it was more comfortable to let it end up in my mailbox and in your phones than anything else. And no one to this day has come out and owned this document because I guess they realized it was nothing worth owning. But I would love to know who put it together so that we will know where to answer our questions. Good reform must have access to resources. It must have technology integration. But how can we have technology integration when we can't even have Wi-Fi in some schools? And some people can't do their CXC exams when they're online. Reports can't get printed at the end of the term. Teachers have to use their own mobile data. Hear what I'm saying? Teachers have to use their own mobile data to buy plans so that they can use their devices in their classrooms. Computers and laptops malfunction with no plan of maintenance at all. No technology policies in place for anything. Come on, are we really serious about education reform? Based on what I'm telling you, are we really serious about education reform? Edutech, get tech. Educate 1, 2, 3. Which one we at now? So reform needs community engagement, which we are only now seeing, and I think that they decide not to engage the community because we were going to engage the community and decide, well, you know what? The Democratic Labour Party can't do it first, so we have to do it. Reform needs to be driven decision making. And that data-driven, and that data should be available to the public. Not like the last published statistics that were 9 years ago. There's no information. We do research on education. There are no statistics. And most of all, we need sustainable funding. Schools can't even get enough money to run the school, to pay the bills. This government needs, give you what? How much ever money you want. If you want $5, they give you $2 until you figure out the rest on your own. Make it work. Since there's no opposition in Parliament, I decided to take a look at where the money was going. And in the 2023-2024 estimates that nobody got to question because they're in charge of everything, under the Education Reform Unit, there's a sum of $889,691. Y'all got that figure in your head? All right. That had been allocated. What do you think it was allocated for? Y'all don't know. It was for children, teachers, schools. All right, so since y'all don't know, I'm going to read it for you word for word. It says, under the Education Reform Unit, provides for consultancies to facilitate development of curricula in new growth areas and revision to curricula in primary and secondary schools, legislation changes to the Education Act, establishment of National Teachers Council, and reform committees. What's it for? Thank you. You hear that C word? Consultancies. That is what it's really for. Nothing to do with the children yet, but for consultancies. So we are all over the place talking about reform, have not assigned a red cent in the estimates on the reform to the things that people need, but we will spend this fiscal year at least $800,000 on consultancies because that is what is important to them. How much money do you think was assigned to the Education Reform Unit? Not a red cent. And I use the word red for a reason, not a red cent. And we are saying that we are serious about education reform. So obviously it's just talk, smoke and mirrors again, just smoke and mirrors all the time to make you think something's happening when in truth and fact, there's nothing happening. So let me make it clear to you. A Democratic Labour Party vision on education is one where our children are taken care of. First, nursery to tertiary, where our teachers are developed, trained, and empowered and remunerated properly for the miracles that they work each and every day in the classroom. A system where the laws and policies and regulations are in tune with the demands of the system, the realities of the society that we exist in, and the system where resources are allocated to get the best possible results on the ground. A modern Barbados will require an education ecosystem that allows for all schools to have areas of excellence. An ecosystem where there can be flexible movement of teachers and students based on their passion, skills, and aptitude. A modern Barbados must put in place physical, cognitive, and behavioral testing as a standard feature of its early childhood education, with a plan in place to act based on what the results of those tests reveal. So we are testing, we are looking to see where the children need help, and then we are helping them there. We're not just pulling stuff out of the sky and saying, do this, when it doesn't apply to you. We will have guidance counselors, social workers, trained psychologists, because they are all needed on the ground in a modern Barbados educational system. Can you believe that over 40,000 students in the system and there's only one psychologist in the ministry? Only 7 social workers at secondary schools, 12 or 15 school counselors in primary schools that come today and not tomorrow. And we say again that we are serious about education. It's clear we are not. If we are really serious about education, we must recognize that a direct link between our students' social and emotional well-being to their academics and their behavior. Any reform must have that at the forefront. So we cannot bury our heads in the sand and then take years to help a child who needs help right now. These children need help now. COVID has shown that children are far behind, and how are we helping them? By just talking about reform and doing nothing. Children are graduating from school every year for the last 2 years, and what? Again, nothing. So our vision for reform is one that starts at nursery with an emphasis on early childhood education and comes all the way up, with the resources and training that our primary school teachers need, with their interventions, social and otherwise, that are absolutely required if we are to save some of these children before they fall or fail and then become dependent on who? The society. And resent the same society, becoming lost teenagers and then adults. So I don't know if you know, but every year there's a criterion reference test that is done in the schools. But what they do with the results? What is done with the results? So from what I was told, nothing. I think it would make more sense for this test to be done in May or in September at the beginning of the school year, where the results can be used to help teachers plan for their students effectively. So the problems that we see are at 11 and 11 plus. Didn't start at 11 plus. So we're blaming 11 plus for a problem that 11 plus did not start, right? It started long before that child even sat down to take an exam. So we have to use technology and data to track our students, to see where they are weak, to trust and train our teachers to take the steps needed at the right time and not after the fact. We need to include an element of continuous assessment, ongoing parental engagement, don't leave out the parents, teacher feedback, and students' interest surveys in what programs are being put in place. When we say each child matters, we do believe this. It's just not a slogan. It is really our belief, and it is the way that we in this Democratic Labour Party live. The system is overburdened in its current state. Ask any teacher. How the school system is set up is overburdened. It's because of the curriculum, the things that they have in place is not working. From the time we realize at 11 that a particular group of students have underperformed, we need more resources So that child that get 20 in 11 plus, what we can do with that child, we can just push it in the school and hope that it recovers. No, we need more resources, more teachers, more counselors, more attention, more finances, more programs, and they can go on with the more and more and more. That child needs more than the average child who would have gotten 80, because obviously they would have fallen behind somewhere, and we need to bring that child up to where it needs to be, so that we can give these children a real chance to do something with themselves and their lives. School leaders and teachers should be carefully chosen depending on the profile of the school. Let us stop blaming one exam and using this exam as a scapegoat and trying to do over, like somebody said earlier, edutech. Stop blaming principals and teachers for the failures of the system, and instead fix the inequalities, inequities, inefficiencies in the system first for all the children, especially those with special needs, because we are not talking about those children either with special needs. But this would take a long time for me to even go into that, so I would talk about that another time. Another area that needs our attention is the plants and their infrastructure. You all saw the paper recently? What's happening with the school plants? They're talking about school plants that are collapsing, unusable. The last minister came in hot and sweaty again, just like me right now, hot and sweaty, about school plants and maintenance. Yet this school year, we have perhaps the largest number of teachers sticking out. Because of what? Environmental problems and plant issues. Again, priorities, priorities, priorities. What are their priorities? In the local newspaper, we heard about St. John Primary School. Anybody heard about that? Yeah. And they said it's not what? Fit for teaching or learning. How many other schools that are not fit for teaching and learning? Ellerslie, somebody here is was saying. What are we going to do about it? What are the parents doing? We had so many school problems this year. Parents, you need to stand up and fight. Don't take the school children and say, well, you know, I want children to learn, so don't get me wrong on that. But if you don't stand up for this, nothing's going to happen about it. How can we move forward with education reform if buildings are making people sick? This is where planning is important. A Democratic Labour Party vision is one where preventative maintenance is priority, where communication with teachers and their unions is a regular practice, and where action to remedy the challenges that arise is done as a norm, not a second thought, or not in emergencies only. We know it will call for financing, but we are willing to put our money where our mouth is. If you want schools to get better, we need to be willing to spend money to do so. So spend the money in government on the schools and our children. How can we expect results if every year you're spending less and less in places that matter? In 2000, this government forced through edutech, spending a very pretty penny. Anybody do your research, you will see how much money was spent on edutech. Then 5 years later, they had to go back to the drawing board and come up with edutech part 2. Because why? Many of the things they wanted to do could not work and did not work. Even though they were warned from the beginning that it was not going to work. And they had to go back to the drawing board. Again, 2 years later, they had to do what? Change up things again. Sounding familiar? That sounds like a recurring problem now. Saying one thing, then God go back and pull it back, and then saying something else, and God going to pull it back again. This is a recurring problem, sounding familiar. And now 20 years later, after the first edutech, COVID hit, and what? From edutech, where's all those computers and all the things that were happening during edutech? Nothing. We had to start all over again. People do not trust or allow this government to try a thing with you, with our children and with our schools. Insist on clarity, insist on details, and as my grandmother would say, the devil is in the details. So find out those details. So let me be clear to anyone listening this evening, the Democratic Labour Party has been listening, watching, and waiting to give this government a chance to show that they are capable of managing the task of crafting an effective education ecosystem. Now they have moved from the word reform to reimagine. So reform wasn't working, so you know what? Let me say, let's reimagine. The only thing that we should do now is reject and refuse the rubbish that they want to force on us. The DLP believes that crafting an education ecosystem for a modern Barbados must begin and end with you, the people. It begins and ends with you. That our ideas and our policies must be informed by your needs, by your realities, and by your expectations. We believe that reform is an ongoing process that never fully ends. But it must start with a clearly communicated vision and a clearly communicated philosophy on what we want for our schools, for our economy, and most of all, for our country. This is how you would go about it. This is how I would go about it. So as the time winds down, I have a few questions for the minister, and I hope that they're carried word for word to her, because I want them carried word for word. So get out your notepads and pen and write down word for word, because I asked one simple question a couple of days ago, and she jumped out of her bathroom. Sorry, not the bathroom. I wasn't sure which sign was on her bathroom door. Or wherever you call a concerned citizen of this country, and to call, imagine that, she jumped out and calling concerned citizens that raise issues liars. So I want her to jump out again tomorrow and answer all these questions, but I doubt you even get an answer. Madam Minister, I beg you, answer these questions for me. Who is really leading the education reimagine process in Barbados? You say it can't be her, right? Because you don't see her and I hear her. Okay. All right. No, the question is for her, not for you. Not for you. Is it true that a complete reform proposal was already done last year, already agreed to, and ready to be announced before any of these recently rushed meetings? And the only reason it was pulled back was for fear of the backlash from the public? Is it true that many schools don't even have enough money to pay the utilities, far less pay by paper, ink, first aid, supplies, and exam materials? Is it true that the posts for principals and deputy principals have been advertised 3 times in the past 5 years, but yet a single interview has been held? Will the ministry ever release the findings of the data processing department as to whether the IADB survey was in breach of Barbadian laws? How many persons in the ministry make up the education reform unit? How much are they paid? What successes have they had so far that we can see? How is the $40 million from the IADB Skills for the Future 2 program is being spent? Give me time to finish right. How many counselors and social workers are assigned to primary and secondary schools in Barbados? Is there a plan, policy, or idea to help reduce violence in schools? My colleague Felicia touched earlier on the violence issue. Will this minister ever work with the ministers, because I know they keep changing education ministers when they realize they can't do the job. So will this minister, this current one, because we are not sure we might get another one soon, ever work with the Minister of Labor and Social Care to properly craft an education ecosystem that serves our students better in a modern Barbados? Now, these questions need to be answered. We have been quiet for far too long, Barbados. Tonight, I want to say to you that the battle for the soul of education has officially begun. This party will not keep quiet. Education has always been a priority for us because we know it impacts all people at all levels. This party will not retreat or surrender. The minister can call all of us liars over and over and over because This Melissa Savoury-Gittens right here will not shut up. Any calls that I get, I will answer the call. And I will not back down because I am not afraid to speak the truth. And ask the hard questions that ordinary Bajans want to ask, but are afraid to ask because they're afraid. I was given a job as a sports person on education, and unlike the minister who is not doing her job, I will do mine every single day as long as I am needed. So to all those who are listening, I will say stay tuned. There is so much more to come. We have committed to this for the long haul. We are not afraid because someone with a deep voice shouts at you. No, we ain't letting a deep voice frighten us. This is the Democratic Labour Party of the people. We are democratic by the people, of the people. We will never be the party of a one-man show and never a party of one-woman ideas. And so I will ask all of you here to join us, all of you who are listening online, all of you who got WhatsApp messages, join us. Call in the radio programs, air your concerns, talk to parents in your neighborhood, talk to students, spread the word, come to our meetings, talk your talk. Let us do what is best for our people and our children together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Yeah, for another very exciting presentation. And the proprietor wants me to say again that there are ham cutters, fish cakes, and fish steaks for sale. So you need to, He also wants to announce that Mr. Dudley Harris, that's the proprietor, is having a shop line here at his residence on the 14th of June. That's next week, Wednesday, at 7 p.m. Doors open, and we're looking forward to seeing you. So those of you who are into these shop lines and want to join Dudley, obviously he's a friend. So there you are. And we need to make the time and come over and at least have a drink with him next Wednesday at 7 p.m. So again, we had a very lively presentation on education by our spokesperson for education this time. And it continues to lay the groundwork for the kinds of information which we must share with our supporters and with the public of Barbados. As I said earlier in one of my interruptions, if you want to call it that, one of my introductions, that we are on the cusp of another general election. So we got to be ready. We have to be ready as a political party and know that any time now, enough confusion would have set in the Barbados Labour Party once again for Ms. Motley to do the only thing which she has the authority to do, and that is call a general election and see how many of the humbugs in her party she can get rid of. Because that's one of the objectives that will be part of her program. And don't worry with these stories about Ms. Motley going nowhere. Ms. Motley ain't going nowhere. Miss Motley ain't going nowhere. She coming back here to run things in Barbados. That's how she operates. Let's move on smartly. Our next speaker, I don't like the term needs no introduction because all of us need an introduction. Michael Lashley was my colleague in Parliament for 10 years, colleague in Cabinet, first as Minister of Housing, and then for the last 5 years of our term as Minister of Transport and Works. He acted on numerous occasions as Attorney General. We all know he is a highly qualified attorney. He is one of the leading King's Council, no, not Queen, King's Council in Barbados, and a really sought after protector of the rights of persons when there are reasons to have that protection. He's also a very good speaker. We all know that. And I'm sure he's going to bring another message to us this evening regarding the whole question of education, education reform, and where we are in Barbados and what is most urgently needed. Michael, thank you, and please make your presentation. Good to see you.
Good night to the people of St. Michael's South, surrounding districts, all of the constituencies, and my Democratic Labour Party family. It's a little hot in here, a little under the weather, but I still made it. When I'm called to duty, I will turn up, nevertheless, respectfully. I say no more. I got a message on my cell phone that a man a few yards away from here was up there calling my name, calling Melissa's name, and calling the other speakers who prosecuted him on the last occasion on the Democratic Labour Party platform. He even used the words, in fact the phrase, that if we continue to attack him, that he would eat us alive. But keep quiet. But if he eat us alive, he will create history because he will have more brains in his belly than his head. But I speak to you tonight because I have to save my throat. Not only am I under the weather, but I'm supposed to appear in court tomorrow. And they have to deliver a mitigation on behalf of a client of mine. But I was saying to, when John was speaking, I was saying to myself, he said one minister said that you can build 10,000 houses. One minister said he can build 15 stadiums. Another minister said he can plant 1 million trees. So I am not surprised that we're having this confusion and we're having this turnaround, and every minute we have some sort of change. And that I am not surprised when the minister said, particularly the Child Justice Bill, that they have to go back to the public to consult with the public, and that the other bill is now in the Joint Select Committee of Parliament. John will tell you that, in fact, no, you were not in Parliament at the time. In 2003, leading up to the 2007 election, Glenn Clark came to Parliament with a Road Traffic Act. And from the time the Act came to Parliament, we look at it, it was replete with illegality. It has so much issues and mistakes. It had a number of unconstitutional clauses, and it went straight to Select Committee and never came up. And then there was the Antiquities Bill that again that they brought to Parliament, and the Parliament again decided to carry it to Joint Select Committee because it offended parts of the fundamental rights of the Constitution, that is your rights to property. It never came back out. In fact, we never touched it be looked at it and never look at it because we believe that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and we cannot offend the Constitution. But when I look at this topic we are discussing tonight, we speak about educational reform, and we must tailor this into the concept of access to social justice. I say that because I've listened to speakers before me. I've listened to Ms. Dujon, and she made the telling point about young persons who not only end up after school, and then they end up on the wrong side of the law. Even in our juvenile justice system, based on my experience, when I ask and when I look at many reports that come to me in relation to young offenders, and we try to look at the cause of the antisocial behavior, it is low educational attainment. It is drug dependency. It is an environment where the family is dysfunctional. So the question we must ask ourselves is how will we tailor educational reform to treat to these persons not only before but also after, because once they're in the system we still have to treat to their problems so that we can bring them back into society and that they can become productive members of the society. I tailored out my speech in this way because I heard Melissa spoke about the primary school education. This is my view that is where we have to start. We have to look at our primary school system. We have to look at the resources that we are putting in the primary school system. We have to look at the resources that we are putting so that we can have an early diagnosis of the issues that is really confronting that young child. And let me tell you this. My experience will tell me that, you know, when you speak to them, they will say to you, Mallet, my mommy didn't have any money to send me to school sometimes on mornings. They had a breakfast. I couldn't understand what was going on. But it could have been an early problem, a medical problem, that was missed by specialists or missed by social workers that should have been attached to the primary school system so that we can save some of these youngsters from going into a life of crime. But I ask myself what a government with 30 seats, what they were doing to touch these two planks that I want to address tonight. Now, in the juvenile justice system, and even if those who go past the juvenile system and end up now in the formal, or what we call the system at the adults, what programs that we are bringing to really touch these young men, I must say women, up there. And the Labour Party in their manifesto since 2018 promised a reform of vocational, technical and otherwise programs up there for those who missed those opportunities in the formal education system to bring them back into society. To this day, I have not heard, I have not seen one of those programs launch or even a pilot project launch to say, you know what, we're really treating to the problem or treating to the issues. Because it is crucial that we touch and reach to those persons who are vulnerable, who are underprivileged. Because many of those youngsters up there will come out and not even have a residence to go to. And the question is, after we bring the programs to them, and they leave from in there, should this program also touch and concern a serious aftercare program for those persons who don't have the family structure to guide them, but have to be out there languishing, and in fact, vulnerable now to the element that caused them to be in prison. So what are we doing about placing a serious technical and vocational and otherwise component to the aftercare program for those persons, particularly first-time offenders, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 25 years old? And I can tell you something too. Some of them have potential. Some of them have talent. And because you made a mistake for the first time, I believe you must give a man a second chance. And there's a possibility that if they're exposed to a serious aftercare program, with a structured program, with more educational opportunities, because you know the stigma already. You come out of there, you still want to get some education, you still want to become a productive member of society. But there's this stigma that when you go up there, that you should end back up there. That you shouldn't be given the opportunity. That you shouldn't be given a second chance. And that if the state don't realize that it is their responsibility to bring a structured aftercare program with a serious educational component, with specialists, with all the skill sets, to bring them back into society. Because we talk about educational reform, but you know, there's a vulnerable group out there that educational reform should touch and concern. And when they say vulnerable group, I'm speaking about those who run afoul of the law for the first time. Some obviously are short-time persons up there serving short-time sentences. That could have been given the opportunity to benefit from an educational reform system or program that would touch and concern and help them. But this is a government of talk. This is a government that will say to you, oh, we had that in contemplation. This is a government that will say to you, oh, we are planning that. Nothing stopped this government. No COVID, no volcanic dust cannot stop 30 people from sitting down in a room and putting their heads together and putting their brains together. Well, I say brains cautiously. to sit down and come up with a program like what and analysis and research that you heard on this platform tonight. But I'm putting this to the Democratic Labour Party because I recognize that we have a lot of discussions, a lot of consultations throughout Barbados, but I worry about this group. I worry so much about this group. Because not only do they touch and concern fellow citizens, but it touch and concern me daily when I have a pre-sentence report in my hand, or what we call a probation report, and the most common thing is low education attainment, dysfunctional family, exposed to drug dependency. And you know the Democratic Labour Party sometime in 2014 decided, look, we recognize that there's a problem in this country coming up from the primary school, coming through the secondary school, whatever. That is the issue with drug dependency, high marijuana use. We recognize that. I can tell you something. Marijuana out there like a snow cone. And we recognize the issues that is having with young people within the primary school, within the secondary school system. We recognize it. And we recognize also that to treat to this, we will establish what we call a drug court. But a drug court not basically with a punitive aspect to it, but a court to assist, to rehabilitate, reform, and educate those young persons and prevent them from using drugs. It was established and it had a component in it where those persons involved in the program will be exposed not only to religious knowledge and information, but they were taught the basic concepts of how to become a productive citizens and also to steer them away from the use of marijuana. And so that our teachers and our principals will not be overburdened with the task of playing social worker and playing psychologist and still having to teach. Because that is what's happening now. So we abandon the drug court, but in the context of abandoning the drug court, we also decided to relax the law when it comes to marijuana use. You know, I certainly believe that a Democratic Labour Party, that when we are returned to power, that the first thing that we should do to protect those young, vulnerable students, re-establish the drug court. Re-establish it in a form that not only will there be a magistrate, but that there will be retired education experts, retired persons who can volunteer their services, psychologists, so that we can touch the lives of those young and vulnerable people that we are leaving out, that we are basically leaving out of this discussion on educational reform in this country. I support the discussion on it. But I will also say that I support a discussion on bringing meaningful programs to impact on the lives of the underprivileged and the vulnerable and those who cannot function in society by themselves because they have no family. They have no family to depend on. So, my view is that what happened out there in St. Philip, in my constituency, former constituency, let me say that, I have not heard a word from you can't remember the name of the MP for out there now. So bad. But I believe in protocol. I want to hear a word or a sentence from the sitting MP first, and then I will make a comment. But I can also make a comment that something fall off a truck. So we will soon find out who is the liar and who was telling lies about this whole issue. But in the fullness of time, and as the late David Thompson would say, let the fish gather. And they're gathering as we speak. But I want to critically examine the performance of this government when it comes to education. I recall there was a murder at some school in St. James. I recall a Saturday, they called a big meeting with all the stakeholders up there in the cabinet room for a big press conference afterwards. And a whole set of proposals came out. I've looked at them. The proposals that came out, that they will have additional social workers in each school. I want you to ask the Minister of Education, how many social workers, how many psychologists, how many of the proposals that they're promised as a result of, because you know this is a government that when something happened, hot and sweaty, run, and then within a day, gone back though. Nothing to do with it. And what something happened and it distract from that, and Bajans and no about it no more, it can't no more, and it gone on to another topic. So we must hold them to account. And ask them, look, how many of these proposals you all implemented as a result of the big able meeting out up there? Because they were so concerned about violence in the schools. They were so concerned. And after all the talk went by, everything went down, down, down again. So when you hear talk about whether the Democratic Labour Party, that people are saying that the Democratic Labour Party ain't do this, ain't do that, ain't do nothing. But I hope that you listen to what Melissa said. I hope you listen to what they said about what they stopped that could have impacted. And if it was up now and running, I'm sure a lot of the antisocial behavior that we have now will be stopped and nipped in the bud. How comes an attorney general could come in and see that a drug court is running smoothly, no blunders, and stop it one time, and then call themselves a caring government? This is what I want to see. I want to see, you see all these fancy centers that they want to build and all that. I want to see programs coming into the community and coming into them. And so that the boy that cannot get in the polytechnic, the boy that cannot get into skills training, that he too will have an access. And he too will have an opportunity to sit down in the evening, whether it's 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, or whatever, and benefit from some sort of program, skill, or otherwise, to bring them back into the mainstream of society. That's what you want to see. Yes, all the stadiums, yes, we need that. But I hope that they move their mind away from the stadiums and say, look, I believe that reintegrating these young people back in society can be impacted if we develop a secondary institution, I keep on saying it all the time, with all the skill sets, the psychologists, all the social workers. You know how much people in Barbados walk in boat unemployed with a social work degree? You imagine that? And that we have young people who are not first-time offenders, but obviously serving short-time sentences, that we can build those institutions within the community, or build one institution. And it must, to my view, have a residential component to it, that we have them in a structured environment so that they can rehabilitate and reform themselves and reintegrate themselves back into society. That's what you want to see. But this is a government that cares only about a certain class. And we can see it daily, because I am not condoning illegality, but the same way that you treat ordinary Barbadians in Barbados because they float town planning laws, that you go and take a bulldozer and you push down their houses in front of the media, and then the minister could come and say that, oh, I didn't know that the town planning law was breached, and then nothing is done because of that particular person is of a particular class, but the poor working class people now have to fight the might of the state and now have to turn over their life, start afresh, and now become a burden on the state again. Yeah, in your former constituency, Bellevue, and all those areas. Because you know, proper housing is important to a child development. It's important though, and to a child progress in terms of education. And these issues we have to tackle. These issues we have to tackle. We have to wrestle them to the ground. And we have to fight them frontally. So, a Democratic Labour Party with its history, strong history of educational reform, strong history in educational development, that, I always wonder. When I hear, I don't listen. Sometimes I pass, every going to the bathroom, and I hear brass socks on. I didn't even hear some people saying what the Democratic Party did do. But they didn't do nothing. But I hope that what came out of this meeting tonight is plastered all over social media. And so those who want to be informed, those who want to be educated about the Democratic Labour Party achievements in education will have now the information at their hands, and that when somebody calls into the calling program, that they can now present the argument on behalf of the Democratic Labour Party, because we are too silent as a party, and that we have to get up and defend this party, and you have to get up and attack too. You imagine Kurt Humphrey want to attack somebody? You imagine a man with a Michael Jackson voice want to attack somebody? You imagine that? But John Boyce, you know, if he were in Parliament still, and he wasn't there, he would have to walk out around the day every half an hour. Because I do not understand how Dujon can get up in here and actually, I must say, she's not an attorney at law, but she did a better job than the legal advisor for the Barbados Labour Party. I'm not getting that. But she so prosecuted the case for the Democratic Labour Party. What is wrong with saying that the bill have nothing to do with parental rights? What is wrong in saying that the bill, let me tell you something, no bill is perfect. Even when it becomes the law, it's still not perfect. And that is why they have lawyers out here. And that is why we are in a democracy. And that is why, so why are you then now asking for consultation? You know what the idea is? You don't want to hear now from Wise Council, from the Democratic Labour Party? And Steve and John will tell you that every single bill that we carry to Parliament, the first attack was with the stakeholders and get consulted. You didn't meet with the stakeholders. When they brought the same amendment to the Road Traffic Act, the first line of attack was, I ain't consult with the taxi persons. I ain't consult with the disabled persons. And in fact, I actually met with them about 15 or 20 times trying to iron out the clauses in the bill, no? But we met with them. And we had wide counsel ably prosecuted and put a case with the Democratic Labour Party that they want now to get up there. With, I understand the Minister for Environment is up there too. But we don't even know who he is. We don't even know who the Minister of the Environment is. I don't know who he is. And I don't want to know you either. But any man who could, any man who have as a policy, as a minister, that his the fundamental plan of the environmental policy of Barbados is to plant 100 trees, a million trees, something got to be wrong. That's the fundamental plan of environmental policy of the Barbados Labour Party, you know? In the dry season. And then one man said, I think it's either Kurt Humphrey or he said, look, we are so good that we can give the people in St. George and St. Thomas a C. No, it is ridiculous because the Democratic Labour Party, we believe that we must bring real policies to the people. Real policies that touch and concern the lives of ordinary citizens of Barbados. So when we have this discussion tonight, you can walk away from here saying, you know what? What Melissa said, what Faith said about education, what John said even as chairman, because John spoke for an hour when he leave from St. Philip. But no, that is no attack on John. But he did an excellent job because I understand that he did an excellent job. Because I understand that one of the batsmen retired her, so you had to take over. I'm not attacking anybody, but of course, I'm struggling with my voice and things too. But I hope that tomorrow I can get up and speak before a judge and friendly. But if obviously if you're sick, you're sick. So I'm not making any sport at anybody. So leave that where it is. Do not go away from here saying that you're attacking anybody. Of course, this is a party of unity. The Democratic Labour Party will move forward. We have a government trend. And we understand that moving forward, we have to move forward with unity. And we understand that they have experience out there too that we must tap into too. And like John, I want to help the young people too. And also Steve too, with all his experience in the important ministry that he had, could also lend experience and lend information to the young people of this party and moving forward. When I came into the Democratic Labour Party, I had the likes of Warwick Franklin. I wrap up now, so you can sell your fish cakes. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Let me say though, for finally, when I was in the Democratic, when I came in the Democratic Labour Party, now, of course, as a youngster, the experienced members of the Democratic Labour Party lend assistance freely. And so I believe I can follow suit and offer assistance freely and voluntarily to build this party up. And given the fact that this is the last zonal meeting, I hope that when August comes, I am not canvassing. My name go on the ballot paper many times. I do not canvass. But it's not coming off this time. And let me tell you this, my people from St. Philip ready. And we are ready to assist this party and assist the president and to ensure that the Democratic Labour Party is returned to power and that the people of Barbados have a voice and that there's a voice for the voiceless and that the vulnerable and the privileged, that they are protected by the Democratic Labour Party, a party that cares for the people of this country. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well done, Michael, but I don't think we expected anything less. Michael is always a class batsman in this team, so thank you again for your contribution. I really thought he was going to spend a little time though on the housing facility down by Parliament, because Ninja Man said he want back the place he was living. And he can't understand how, he does not understand how you could be prepared to build a housing estate in his place and he can't get one of the rooms. So he's waited to be considered to be one of the renters for that building next to Parliament. Imagine you going next to Parliament and establish a housing facility. It just don't make sense. An area where you should have utmost security and where you could easily turn the building, if you wanted to turn it into something associated with Parliament or Cabinet and these kind of offices, and so create an entire environment around Parliament and move a little way away from Marhill Street then and go into the old financial building area. But maybe because you know the Labour Party is a party of promises, so maybe we will have the opportunity to make that change and to use that facility for a much more sensible, I think, or let me say appropriate arrangement than is presently planned. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the final presentation for the evening. The final presentation, I said, for this series of meetings. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our final speaker this evening, the President of the Democratic Labour Party, a man who has made his name known in this party, in this country, who has presented policies from time to time which seek to shape the future of Barbados, alternative financial options, alternative social programs, alternative investment programs for this country. We need to listen carefully to the messages that he and the team brings. And we have that opportunity this evening for Ronnie to put the icing on the cake, so to speak, for the entire discussion on education as it relates to the Democratic Labour Party and the future. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the President of the Democratic Labour Party, Dr. Ronnie Yearwood.
Good night, Democratic Labour Party family. Like Michael, my voice may be a little bit waning tonight, but I am here to do my best because I promised to be here, and when I promise to turn up, I turn up to serve not only this party, but this country. Tonight, family and friends, I want you to hear me because something dangerous is happening not far from here over at Greaves. Instead of explaining to Bajans why they can't fix the road in St. Andrew, why they're taking back keys from the people, why the school in St. John ain't working, why the NIS report ain't get to me yet, why they are taking a company that can take itself to America on the taxpayers' money in Barbados, but 3,000 flights can't come into Barbados that get canceled under this government. Instead of explaining to the people of Barbados what is happening, you have a prime minister up there cursing Melissa Savoury-Gittens and cursing the women of this Democratic Labour Party. That is what you have this government doing. And talking about how we, the Democratic Labour Party, are somehow destabilizing and threatening the democracy of this country. The only people destabilizing Barbados and threatening the democracy of this country is the Barbados Labour Party. You have every single seat. You have all. And I ask this again, how can a government with every single seat, every single machine available to them as the government, how are you so sensitive to criticism? How are you so sensitive to ideas? How are you so sensitive to opposing and different views? What is wrong with you? You are going to spend an entire meeting cursing the Democratic Labour Party instead of explaining to the people of Barbados how you are going to govern and what you are about. So let me say this and let me say this out front. I, Ronnie Yearwood, I am not afraid. I've never been, I said it in the last campaign. We are not afraid of the incompetent women and men of the Barbados Labour Party. This Democratic Labour Party is full of strong women and men. Last time I called them the brave ones. Tonight they even deserve that title the more because they are the brave ones. They are the people who have been taking it to this government. They have taken the fight and they've got this Barbados Labour Party government on the run. Because there's no way that you would spend an entire meeting responding to the women of this party if they weren't talking sense, if they weren't coming with sensible ideas, if they weren't being credible. Because they are credible. But we're not going to waste time on them because I want to talk to you about the ideas of the Democratic Labour Party. I want to talk to you about what we're going to do tonight, and I would like them to go and do some work. Actually go and work for the people of Barbados, because tonight, that is what I'm going to talk about. Tonight, we want to talk about the ecosystem of education. And I want you to realize something, because there's a particular title that we use. We talked about modernizing the ecosystem of education, and that was purposeful. It was purposeful because when you're thinking about educational development, you're not simply thinking about 11+, you're not simply thinking about primary schools or secondary schools. You are thinking about the entire ecosystem of the country, how the economy, labor, the environment, infrastructure, transport, parenting, how it all connects to the development of our children. That is why we were so intentional when we chose the word ecosystem. We are talking about everything. You cannot modernize, you cannot develop education in this country unless you develop every aspect of the Barbadian society. You have to sit down and think about it. So tonight, on behalf of the educational unit, and this may sound ironic, this may sound kind of strange, that an opposition party is begging for resources for a government department. But let me lend them a hand. Tonight, and I want the media to take this, tonight I asked the government of Barbados to provide the education reform unit with people and resources so they can actually carry out the job of reform. Because as I understand, the education reform unit got 2.5 people. 2.5 people are responsible for reforming the entire educational system of Barbados, and we wonder why we're not getting anywhere. But you are going to take thousands and thousands of dollars and invest in funeral criers. Why not hire a social worker, the same psychologist that Melissa talked about, lawyers, people who have interest in banking and finance, all the requisite persons that you need to put in an education unit to actually reform the education system. Because when you reform the system, you've got to think about transport. You ask the government for statistics about truancy, they may know. Ask the government how many people get school late and the reasons, they may know. Ask the government how many kids probably can't eat, they may know. But you were talking about educational reform. The first thing that government should do, and this is what I'm going to aim my speech in tonight, I am going to outline to the government how to carry out education reform. We're not drilling down to actual details about reform because you can't get there unless you have a process for that reform. Right now, the reform has no process. So let me explain to the government the themes, the headings, and how they should go about reform. One of the first things that the government should do, and I challenge them to do, is produce a digest of educational statistics. How are you reforming a system if you don't know what is going on in it? If you don't know how many children don't eat, how are you going to start a school meals program? If you don't know how many parents can't feed their children, how are you going to start a parent support program? If you don't know how many children are at risk, how are you going to start an at-risk program? If you don't know how many children actually can't read, how are you going to start a reading program? If you don't know how many children don't have after-school care, how are you going to start an after-school care program? Produce, that's your first task. Produce the statistics, tell us what is going on, and then we can have a serious conversation in this country about educational reform. The reality is 30% of students in our schools are not entered for CHCs. Y'all know that? Y'all know at some schools you get to fifth form and you're not entered to do CHCs, so you leave schools without any qualifications in Barbados. That happens at secondary schools in Barbados. That's one of the numbers we do know. So when you're talking about educational reform in this country and reforming the ecosystem, you got to find out why would those kids be failing in the first place? Is it because their home environments do not perpetuate learning? Is it because they don't get any food at school? Or is it because they can't get to school on time because there's no transport to get them there on time? Is it because they have a community that needs support and they're not getting the relevant community support? All of these are the serious questions that we have to ask when we are talking about educational reform and development in this country. It's not about huffing and puffing and talking about you're going to put robotics in schools and you're going to put coding in schools, as if that's the answer to educational reform. Educational reform has to be something that is holistic, something that takes into account the development of the child from birth straight through to 18, 21, 22, lifelong learning processes. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about ecosystem of education development. How many lawyers do we need? Do we know? How many doctors do we need? How do we create a system to provide the workers that we need to develop Barbados? Where are the jobs that they're going to get? The reality is our educational system has to prepare our students for jobs that don't even exist. We have to create students who are able to fit into jobs that you and I right now can't even imagine. If your child is 2 or 3 years old, the job that he's going to do at 20, you have never seen that job. You don't even know what a job can look like. But the educational system has to prepare a mind and a personality that is critical, that is thinking, that is careful, that is thoughtful, that recognizes human values and uplifts people so that they can fit into whatever this world will throw at them. That is the kind of Barbadian that we have to produce. When you talk about Barbadian values, that is who we have to become. So let me help the government out because they seem to be struggling. So they want ideas from the Democratic Labour Party. Let me tell them what they need to do. When you are crafting an educational ecosystem for a modern Barbados, these are the headings or the themes that the government needs to cover. They need to start by thinking about what are the visions and the goal. So you got to outline what is the educational system of Barbados for. You have to articulate what type of student do you want. What are you trying to create? Are you trying to create more equity, more inclusion? Are you trying to create more students who are interested in math, arts? Are you trying to create a balanced student? That's number one. Number two theme, curriculum reform. They need to discuss the need for what will happen in curriculum reform. How do you align our curriculum to the modern world while still maintaining the things that make us Barbadian and teaching the things that we want to teach in our schools? The things that are Barbadian values that allow us to function in the modern world. Because the reality is we don't have to take everything from the modern world. We don't have to take everything from the international community. We can choose what aligns with us and how we want to develop our children and the standards and values that are good for us. Next, teacher training and professional development. We have to address the significance and we have to invest in teacher training. We have to raise the salaries of teachers. That's just the reality. We have to pay teachers more money. We have to invest in their development. We have to understand that they need to be seen as important in this society. Any country where education and students do well, the teachers are seen as important. The teachers are held to the highest esteem. We talk about the Northern system, we talk about Singapore. Teachers are almost gods in those places. That is where we need to see our teachers, so we have to invest in them. Technology integration. You're talking about education development plan. It has to explain the role that technology will play. We have to discuss the importance of digital tools in our classroom. Teachers still teach with chalk and paper and chalkboard and all those things. We have to get to a fully digitized system. I ain't gonna talk about EduTech, but we know EduTech failed. We know that the current Prime Minister failed as Minister of Education under EduTech. There are enough reports out there that show that EduTech was a failure. It did not increase the standards of learning, it did not increase the standards of teaching, and the money was misappropriated. That's reality, that's fact. There are reports out there on this. The other thing we have to look at is an inclusive education system. We have to look at the importance of inclusivity in our system and cater to diverse types of students. What type of student are we catering to? Students who have disabilities, students who have different learning styles, students who have come from different family backgrounds, students who've come from different class backgrounds. All the curriculum has to address these things. Students who are interested in sports, students who are interested in arts, students who are interested in all different areas, but this is what we have to create, an inclusive, supportive educational system. The other thing we have to think about, partnerships and collaboration. Who are the stakeholders that we're going to collaborate with? Are there ways that we can involve businesses and communities in the development of schools and the ecosystem of education? Last meeting, I talked about the fact that if we're bringing international investment into areas, why are they not investing and can they not partner to sponsor schools and support school programs in the communities that they're in? If you're building a Hyatt, is that Hyatt going to sponsor a school in that area and support the development of community activities? These are the kind of initiatives and things that we're going to have to think about. Public-private partnerships in developing our educational system and financing education. Because right now the government spends about $500 million on education, and if we're going to have to reform education, we're going to have to spend $500 million. We're going to have to spend $500 million plus more in order to reform our educational system. These are kind of the realities that we face. John has a quick message.
All right, the driver of XC1084, please go to your car. A resident wants to get into their home. XC1084, thank you.
No problem. And these are the kind of issues that we're going to have to face in developing our educational system. We have to think about early childhood education, recognize the importance of primary education, laying the foundations for the future, discuss the strategies for early intervention. The ages between 1 to 5 are some of the most critical times in a child's life. We have students who leave primary school at 11 and can't read. So when they get into high school, the not reading didn't start, then it started at primary school and nursery. So something is going around. How are we developing a holistic child? How are we ensuring that every single child in Barbados gets access to the education it needs to become the best of who it can be? The next thing, assessment and evaluation. We have to assess and evaluate our schools and our teachers. We have to discuss methods of not only assessing students, but teachers and schools. We have to decide how do we assess students, long-term assessment over time, so that they're able to move from primary to secondary to college to university and on and on. All of these are the kind of themes that we have to address. Career readiness and lifelong learning. So we have to address the idea of vocational training that we talked about earlier. All of these are the issues. The other issue, infrastructure and resources, because right now our schools are in a decrepit state. We have St. John talking about environmental problems. Our schools are not functioning. Our schools need to be upgraded. So these are the kind of themes that when you're talking about educational reform that you have to look at. I am happy to share this short document with the government of Barbados so it can help them. So that when they come with an educational plan, they understand what we are looking at. And what I would implore them to do tonight is to ensure that they publish a digest of educational statistics so that we have an idea of what we are working with. Because there's no way we can reform education properly if we don't have the data. Because otherwise, all we're doing is imagining. As they said in that document, reimagining. So we're just going to sit down and talk about education reform, but with no basis on how we're actually going to reform the education system of Barbados. And that makes no sense to me. So when we're talking about reforming the educational ecosystem of Barbados, these are the kind of themes that we have to talk about. These are the kind of issues that we're going to have to deal with. These are the kind of challenges that we're going to have to face. And I would challenge the government, and I would challenge the Prime Minister, and she could tell that to her Minister of Education, because the Minister of Education seems to hide these days, to actually, instead of worrying about the Democratic Labour Party, do some work. Take notes of these themes. If you don't understand all of them, we are here prepared. We are here, we can sit down and help you through them. Because this is about the people and the students of Barbados, and it is not about the Minister of Education. It is not about the Prime Minister, and it sure is not about the Minister of People and Elder Affairs, who needs to seem to go back to school and learn something, because he seems to always be getting off on the wrong foot. And I can leave that there. But so when we are thinking about a modern and creating that ecosystem for Barbados, these are the kind of issues that we have to face as a party, as a country? These are the kinds of questions that we have to ask in a serious way to come up with the policy that we will require. And I want to do something else tonight, since we're talking about education and a modern education system, because of one of the issues that we've been faced with recently. And I want to talk to you seriously about that concept of inclusivity that must permeate our educational system, that concept of equality, that concept of openness, and that concept of transparency. And I will go to none other, not only the Constitution of Barbados, that talks about persons' rights, that talks about civil rights and civil liberties, but I will go to the Constitution of none other than this great party. And I'm going to start here, and you're going to see where I'm going to go with this. Philosophy of the Democratic Labour Party, Article 7, and it says, the people of Barbados should enjoy a full democratic freedoms and liberties, including full political, social, cultural, religious, civil, economic, and human rights. That's what it says. Then it also says that each individual does not specify the gender of the individual, does not specify the race of the individual, does not specify the sexuality of the individual. It says each individual should have access to adequate and affordable educational, health, housing, cultural, recreational opportunities, and the appropriate knowledge, skills, aptitude, attitudes should be included so that each individual will be well aware of his or her civic rights and duties and responsibilities. I want to let it be known, I want it to be very clear to Barbadians, to this party, that this party has always stood for the rights of all Barbadians, irrespective of who you are, that this party will not tolerate misogyny, this party will not tolerate homophobia, this party will not tolerate racism, this party will not tolerate sexism, this party will not tolerate any sort of isms. And I put everyone on guard. The Constitution of this party, of which we are all members, shows that this party supports the full human rights and inclusion of all people of this country. All, A-double-L, every single one of them, irrespective of who they are, irrespective of how they are born, irrespective of how they carry themselves, irrespective of their color, their class, their creed, their sexuality, their gender, this Democratic Labour Party has a place for you. The Constitution of this Democratic Labour Party, the philosophy of this Democratic Labour Party has a place for you. And I say this because I believe that this is a teachable moment, not only for this party and for this country, because we have a prime minister, we have a Barbados Labour Party who does not seem to understand that you have to guide this country, and you cannot let fear, you cannot let rumors, you cannot let innuendo take hold. And the prime minister is failing to rise to the challenge that she's been put here to do, to guide this country through the difficult issues of race, class, sex, and gender conversations that are required for the development of a modern Barbados. We will have our differences, we will have our fights, but at some point we have to have these conversations. We have to be open to understand that at the end of the day, and as my colleague had told me, there's something called the milk of human kindness. Everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves that opportunity to be loved and to be understood for their basic and fundamental humanity. That humanity which we're born with, that humanity which nothing can take away from you, and that is a humanity which this party will protect, and which, as long as I am president, that this party will stand for, and I will enable, and I will fight for these particular philosophies under this party's constitution, which I am empowered to do as a leader of this party. I understand, and I had people say, Ronnie, don't touch the bathroom issue, it's just about signs. But I just go where people don't go, and I just ride where everybody's be frightened to go. The reality is, the issue of the signs is about the signs, and it's just about signs, but it's also about something else. It is also about recognizing that people have fears of what they do not understand, And instead of having a big, open conversation and using the moment to speak to the people of Barbados, take them into your confidence, explain to them where we're going, explain to them if that is your direction of travel. Say, look, this is what we want to do. You hide away, you cower, you come out blustery and shouting and talking and trying to cast aspersions on the good and decent women of this Democratic Labour Party instead of doing your job. That moment was lost, and I'm not sure we will get that moment back, and hopefully tonight we have made another one. That was a teachable moment for the people of Barbados, and rather than use it for what it was, you, Minister of Education, have therefore endangered an entire community that needs support, that needs understanding, that needs openness, and needs love, and you have done nothing to help that community. But I say the Democratic Labour Party is willing, and we are open for the big and difficult conversations of this country when it comes to class, when it comes to race, when it comes to sexuality. I will have those conversations. I am not afraid to thread where others may be afraid to thread, because we will not get the party, we will not get the country we need unless we have them. For too long, we hide behind everything. We do not discuss elitism in our educational system because we are afraid to offend somebody. So what if Harrison College has to go? So what if there's no longer a Queen's College? So what if there's no longer a school? Get over it. Get over yourself, because at the end of the day, this has to be about the people of Barbados. This has to be about giving every single boy and girl, the boy and girl who lives down the street, an opportunity for a good educational system. This is not about you and your badge of honor, but you went to Harrison College, or you went to Queen's, or you went to this place. I used to sit under the tree, and that's my tree and that bench. I don't care about your tree or bench. I will ensure that the educational system of this country is for every single person in this country. It's not about a select few. The elitism that is being bred into our system has to go. And if nobody's going to have those conversations, I will have those conversations. I will push this country where we need to go. I will take your hand, and I will guide you. I will listen. I will hear you. That is what this Democratic Labour Party is about. So I say to every single community in this country, I say to Indians, I say to the Muslims, I say to the whites, I say to the black people in this country, the women, the men, LGBTQI, we are listening to you. We want to hear you. We will talk, we will sit with you. I will bed with you. I will understand your issues. I will understand your challenges, and we will fix this country together, because at the end of the day, we are all Barbadians. You all have something to offer. You all have a place in this country. I will not discriminate. I will not hate, and I will not tolerate it in this Democratic Labour Party. There is no place in it. That is not the way I was raised. That is not the value. Those are not the values that I have, and I will not pass them on. And I do not take lightly to anyone. And I will not take lightly to anyone who think that we will perpetuate modern racism, modern sexism, and modern homophobia, and that we will be carriers of it, because we will not be. When we are talking about education reform, and we are serious about inclusivity and equity, it means all of those things. How do we create more spaces for girls to excel? How do we create more spaces for the boys who are at risk, who just sit on the block to excel and who are not doing well? Because sometimes we forget about them. Boys are under threat in this country. The educational ecosystem that we have to develop, it has to address their needs. Why are boys failing? What's wrong with the modern Barbadian man that seems to be under threat? How do we create spaces that make people who are of different sexual orientations so that they feel comfortable that they can contribute to this society? Are we going to let a mind, let me be honest, are we going to let somebody's fine mind that can develop this country and add value to it go to waste because they are a member of the LGBT community and we think they have no place? Well, you have got to be mad. No way. All of them, every single person has a place in this country. So, tonight, I challenge us again. I always challenge us. Y'all always think, man, this man always pushing me, pushing, Jesus, where we going next? But I challenge you to change, and I challenge this party to change, because I can keep saying it. if we can change this party, we can change this country for the better. The best days for this party, the best days for this country are ahead of us. When the founders of the Democratic Labour Party developed this, and when you read this, it says each individual should have adequate and access to adequate and affordable education. You think they put that there by mistake? And it says each individual. They didn't specify. They say all. That means every single person should have access. Are we living up to this right now in this country? No, we are not. So not only is the government and this current system letting down this country, but it's letting down the very founders of this party. Because don't forget, we not only abide by the Constitution of Barbados, we abide by the Constitution and the philosophies and the principles of the Democratic Labour Party. So for all these come-latelys who think that they know the philosophies of this party, let me tell you what the philosophies of this party are. You think when it says that the people of Barbados should enjoy full democratic freedoms and liberties and human rights. This constitution was written in the 50s, 60s. Human rights, think about it. The Democratic Labour Party constitution talking about human rights. Look how ahead of their time these people were. People now struggling to understand what human rights are. You have a party that was at the founding of this country articulated in its constitution that every single Barbadian is entitled to human rights. It is not a debate in this party whether we support the human rights of any single community or variant communities in this country. There's no debate. It is settled. It was settled at the founding of this party. I challenge anybody to tell me it's not settled. You don't have to debate this. This constitution makes it clear everybody has a place in this Democratic Labour Party. All of you. As I said, women, black, white, Indian, anybody, LGBTQI, every single person has a place here. Religious, non-religious, believers, non-believers. Because at the end of the day, we have one thing in common, our humanity. And if you fall down in that street, or you fall down that road, somebody should be able to pick you up. There has to be a good Samaritan. And how do we create that good Samaritan? The educational system. The values that we import in our students and our young people will be important to creating the type of Barbadian that we want. Not only a Barbadian who wants to get rich, not only a Barbadian who wants to build 2 houses, but a Barbadian that when they see their neighbor, when they see that person on the street, they will not walk on by. They will go to the end, they will put their 5p and they will say, take care of this man, I am coming back next week. That is the type of person that we want to create. Yes, my leaners may have biblical values, yours may not. That does not mean that we are not together. That does not mean we do not inherit and that we do not live in this space and that we cannot abide and create a loving, caring society where all of our people have a place. Because that is the Barbados that I want to see. That is the ecosystem of education that we have to think about. A system where our students can get to school on time, that they can learn in clean environments, a system where teachers are supportive, paid well to do their jobs, a system that has after-school programs built into it, and after-care programs, a system that will support the single mother to ensure that her child can get a proper education. All of these are the things. A system that will ensure that the child who's not eating well can get some meals so that their learning can improve. A system that will ensure that the child that does not have enough can have enough. So an educational system ain't gonna be a big talk in the middle schools and academies this and you're looking for legacy projects. You have to get back to the basics. Where are people? What is happening to our young people? Ask these questions. How do you have 30% of our students leaving school and no qualification? This is Barbados in 2023. 30% leaving and they don't have a certificate to the name except the birth certificate. How is that right? How is that being perpetuated over the cycle of our system, but we are bragging about a few top and elite schools? That cannot be right. When are we going to take this bull by the horns? When are we going to face the issues really hampering this country? When are we going to deal with our elitism, our classism, our colorism, and admit that something is not right in this country and fix it? We just talk, we just whisper in the corners, but we know these things to be real. When are we going to address them? Because you know what? Some people tell me that I shouldn't be leading this party, can't come from nobody. I got a last name. You know I got a last name. I ain't got no old family name. But we talk real, you know. Because I'm just the boy from basketball. So this is the country that we face. I understand the issues that I face. I understand the classism that I experience. I understand the way that May Motley may try to respond, or she thinks that she can treat me, but she could talk down to the members of the cabinet. But don't bring your foolishness to me. Because your last name does not entitle you to be anything special or better than anybody in this room or anybody on my team in the Democratic Labour Party. Because we have to understand in this country that that kind of foolishness has to stop. Your name should not open you any doors more than your qualification and your ability to do the job that you need to do. And that is what a modern educational system has to do. If we cannot weed out those things in our educational system, then we have done nothing. Why should you get special treatment because you got a name? If you haven't got the qualifications, if you don't have the experience, no, that should be the answer. But all kind of doors are open to you because you got a name. That is not the type of Barbados that we want to live in. That is not the type of Barbados that will make this country better. Every single person in this country should have opportunities. Every single person in this country deserves a chance. All of them. We talk about the boys on the block. We talk about the kids riding on the motorcycles. We talk about all of these things. But there's a reason they're there. Have you ever sat down and thought, why are they doing it? You think somebody's get up and say, I ain't going to sit up on the block every morning, smoke 10 joints and drink 2 bottles of rum, and that's my day? You think you just get up and that just happened to you by accident? There's a whole series of things that had to happen from a broken home, from a school maybe where the teachers didn't care, from a school that didn't have resources, from classes that didn't happen, from a father who walked out, a mother who may have walked out, a single parent who was really trying, did their best, but they still couldn't do it. And some parents just try real hard. So some just can't even blame it, but it just wasn't enough. All of these things. So when we see the importer, everybody calling from brass stats, oh Lord, the young people, oh Lord. But have we sat down to think, why did they get there? We are failing them. Our entire educational ecosystem right now is rubbish. That's why they're there. Why do you think them there? The moment that you miss that first bus to school, then at Creek Center, you miss it a second week, a third week, half term, you still ain't gone to school. Well, that didn't become a pattern. The bond already checked for you. You ain't got the truancy officers ready, social worker, you ain't really got none of them. You want psychologists in the ministry. The guidance counselor got 800 students in a school to deal with. They want a teacher that might care, but he overwhelmed because he got other things to deal with. Teachers still got their own families. And then that's one gone. That multiplies 2, 3, 4, 5, 400s all over the system. It's not by accident that these things happen. Our entire system is not working. And I want us to think carefully and hard about the type of education and the type of student, the type of Barbadian that we want to create for the future. We have to get involved in this conversation. Stop giving over your power to a government, and more so stop giving over your power to an incompetent government of 30 people who have all the resources but still unable to produce anything of substance for this country. Stop it now, Barbados. get up and take control of your destinies, take control of the destinies of your children, take control of the destinies of your grandchildren, take control of your own life. They're obviously not doing it. They do not care about you, and I don't say this in any kind of glib fashion. I say this in a serious way. I think this is the first government in the history of Barbados that actually does not care and does not show the ability to understand and empathize with the people of this country. We have had Barbados Labour Party governments. We have had Democratic Labour Party governments. We've had all spare throughout the years. But this particular government, there is something reckless. There's something don't care-ish. There's just something seems deep within themselves that they do not understand service, do not understand that they're here to cater to the needs of the people of Barbados instead of catering to the needs of themselves. A bunch of entitled people who have failed upwards in life, who have nothing to show for themselves, who have never excelled in any particular area of their lives except becoming an MP, and somehow now spend the entire time defending it and cursing anybody who dares say, well, you know, Mr. Minister, you could think about Section 4. That bill ain't working. Tweet that bill. How dare you tell me? How do you mean, how dare you tell you? This is a democracy. We have a right to tell you something. And if you don't like it, resign or step away from it. Because don't think that this Democratic Labour Party is going to stop because some little Kurt Humphrey get up 10 yards from here and crying to his mother that we unfair he somehow. You tell me we going to stop? No. The pressure is on. We have a job to do as the opposition of this country. We have no seats in Parliament, but that will not stop us from doing the job that we have to do. That will not stop us from standing up for the people of Barbados. And I implore you tonight, I want you, this is the last zonal meeting. We're going me here sweating, Jesus. Whew. And I implore you to join this movement. I implore you, this is not about joining the Democratic Labour Party. You could join that too. Because we could do with the membership fee. Because they're not giving us subvention, so you can join me too. But on a serious note, this is not to do about the Democratic Labour Party. This is nothing to do with me. This is nothing to do with these excellent women that we've had on this zonal meeting trail. This is nothing to do with this new energy and talent that you've seen displayed in this zonal meetings. This is to do with you. This is your country at the end of the day. You all have to live in it. You all have to sustain in it. If it is not working, you are the ones who are going to suffer. I can tell you for a fact, none of them 30, they're going home and in bed, and they're going to sleep real good in comfortable houses, and they do not care. And them AC. When them shut their door, tomorrow they will still be paid. Tomorrow all their benefits will still be there. They are going to be fine. It is you who we worry about. It is you that we need to join this fight. It is you that we need to come to help, not necessarily the Democratic Labour Party, but help to fight for the values and the things that you want for your children, the things that you want for yourself. I want, and I know this is nothing necessarily to do with education, but I want to address it a little bit tonight. And this is the last point that I'm gonna speak on, and this is to do with the economy. Because if we can't fix the economy, we cannot fix the educational system. It's going to cost money. Education, as I said before, costs $500 million already. And if you're going to do reform, you're going to probably have to put another $250,000 on top of that. We're looking at serious money to keep the existing system while transitioning a new system. I want to know we've not even seen any costing on that or how it's going to be paid for. So that's a whole nother story. That's going to be another debate all on its own. Because if that includes further loans, then we have to think serious about that. What does that entail, the burden for our children, and how long we're going to be in paying back those loans. So that's a whole nother story. But I want to leave you with something tonight, because I keep hearing a lot of myths, and I'm going to, really get straight to it. A lot of lies about the state of the economy between 2018 and now. So let me get real. In 2018, real GDP fell, and this is going to be real technical, but I just want you to bear with me. I'm going to get to the point. I want you to hold this point. The media can report the technical points. Real GDP fell, but the primary balance improved from 3.2% of GDP to 3.5% of GDP. 2019, the first full year of Mayor Montley's government and her economic policies, real GDP again declined, but the primary balance improved from 3.5 to 6% of GDP. So what's primary balance? Primary balance basically is the difference between what a government earns and what it spends, and that doesn't include like paying off for debt. Now, so what we're saying is that under Mayor Montley's government, the primary balance was improving. Now, the issue there, and this is the issue, where did those improvements come from? Because in each of those years, GDP, real GDP, was falling. So you know where the improvements was coming from? No. Taxes. So essentially, your standard of living was being reduced in order to make the books look good, to meet all the IMF targets that we were supposed to meet. So the increase in bus fare, the pandemic levy, the garbage and the sewage tax, the increase in gas, the child allowance that they eliminate, the 10% on Airbnb tax, the land tax, the airline travel tax, the VAT, the hotel room, the commercial water rates, all the 30 taxes. That is why the books were looking good at one point, but the country was actually growing. That's just the reality. So in 1991, when everybody get up in March over the 8% salary cut, and in 2017, when they got home bad over the NSRL, but think about this. There are no marches now, but these combined measures, then 30 taxes, are more than the 8% and the NSRL, even if you combine them together. So Barbados has actually experienced a harsher austerity program under this government that all the other governments combined put together, but yet everybody silent in this country. Explain that to me. Make that make sense. These are facts. I ain't making none of this. It's in the central bank report. If you go and read it, you can go and look at primary balance, you go and look at fiscal balance. These are real numbers within this report. If you don't believe me, you can make the same point when you look at the overall fiscal balance, which improved from a negative 4.6% of GDP in 2017 to a negative 0.3% in 2018, and a positive 3.6% in 2019. The point being that all those improvements were on your back. But, so the question, are we being taken for a ride? Are people afraid? The IMF is obviously happy about the improvement in public finances. They don't care how a government arrives at those improvements. But this brings me back to the ecosystem of education. Because then the question, how are we going to pay for the ecosystem of education that this government wants to talk about? They've been talking about money yet. How are we going to pay for educational reform? Educational reform will not be free. It will not be cheap. If you're already spending $500 million on the current system, despite all of its failures, warts and all, $500 million, you want to reform a system How much money are we talking about? Another $500 million? That's $1 billion. Another $1 billion, $1.5 billion? Where are we going to get that money from when the debt is already what? $4.6 billion? Remember too at the last meeting that the debt is now about $14.6 billion. Previously on the Democratic Labour Party it was a roughly at 14.1 or so. So the improvement was not that much between then and now. But the underlying figures had shifted from domestic to external. These are serious conversations we have to have in this country. And why are we not having them? Where is the leadership? We are only the opposition. I don't have access to the books. We actually require serious leadership in this country on the issues that matter to Barbadians and stop flying about all over the place, though. The leadership for Barbados does not lie in France, at the Paris Convention or wherever you're going, or a ski resort or a chalet in Switzerland, because you're going to be stirring champagne and eating canapes with some, I don't know, some president or prime minister. The leadership of Barbados is required for the people in this district. The leadership of the Barbados is required for the people at Joes River who need protection. The leadership of Barbados is required for the people in Bayland who got to protect their homes from acquisition. The leadership in Barbados is required from the people in Spikestown, in Six Mills who need protection. The leadership of Barbados is required for dealing with all the issues of crime in this country. The leadership of Barbados is required. How do we create a more sensitive and caring society when somebody would hit somebody and run? How have we got to this place in this country? And these are the type of things that we have to grapple with as a party. This party will be called upon to do serious things. It cannot be business as usual. We cannot play the normal politics. We cannot do the normal things. The tasks ahead of us for the Barbados that we are going to be faced with and the challenges are going to be so huge. I've just gone through some of the data. I've just gone through some of the figures. I've literally just set out a broad brush on education. That's only education, you know. I even didn't talk about health. That's a whole nother story. Literally, we will be called to rebuild Barbados. And that is not hyperbole. That is just our reality. And I know the media can pick up on this one fast, but how does an export agency, and I hate giving the media a side to pick up on, so please print the rest of my stories where you can pick up on this one. But how does an export agency support one of the biggest multi-million-dollar fast food agents to go overseas and set up a food truck? You as an export agency to be there supporting Barbadian businesses that need assistance. And you're going to support the largest chain that got money to be able to do it itself to go overseas and set up a food truck. To cater to who overseas? Barbadians? Then it's already come here. You should be catering to people who ain't know nothing about Barbados. Who do you think going to that food truck event? Bajans! What you want with them know about Barbados? They ain't gonna come home. How that makes sense? Use an expert agency, use BTMI. What sense do you have? Something wrong up there? Something got to be wrong upstairs. How have you been doing this for the last how many years? How is that a sensible development program for the agencies? How is that good spend for the taxpayers of Barbados? And you get people on Facebook, yeah, coming to New York, rotis coming to New York. I'm like, really? Are the taxpayers expensive Barbados? I just explained to you that the books are looking good because they're taxing us into oblivion and you taking our same tax money to carry rotis to New York. Three wingdings, a large fries, and a Coke. That's we taking taxpayers' money. The same money, I just gone through the books. I gone through fiscal bath, and that is what our money is going to be doing. And no one, not the media, nobody report my stories, got the gall to say, export Barbados, BTMI. Do you all think that this is a good spend of money? Can someone please explain to me how much will it cost to do this? Have you worked out the benefits? Have you worked out the captive market? How many people are likely to attend these events? What will be the on-sale for Barbados? How many new tourists are we going to get from this? Nobody asking questions? Nobody instinct asking questions? But people are at the airport walking up and clapping and putting rotis on a plate? This is what Barbados come to? That's what Export Development Agency does do? Maybe something wrong with me. I don't know. Y'all gotta tell me. But this even goes back to our educational ecosystem, because we have to develop a Barbadian that is so critical in their thinking. They are not afraid to challenge leadership. They're not afraid to challenge the government and say, government, what are you doing? This does not make sense to me. I went to school and I have sense and I know that 1 + 1 is 2 and this ain't looking right. I may not understand every single detail about it, but this does not seem right. Well, explain to me who paying this bill so I feel comfortable. I know the story might be reported. Democratic Labour Party criticizes Export Development Agency. News at 7. Then why don't they ask a question? I want somebody to answer. And maybe they're going to come and say, the export agency paid this amount, this body paid, so we could get transparency. We have to get used to that. When the story is printed and it's happening, the other story should tell me how much it costs and who's benefiting, who's involved, and who paying, and who benefit. That's it. We're going to get normalized in the way that these things happen. I shouldn't be here fighting, not trying to understand how export agency doing this. That should be explained. A food truck? Look, let me, listen. So, we have to get serious. We have a lot of work to do when it comes to educational reform and development in this country. I've gone through the themes that you have to go through when you're thinking about a new educational system, which are the visions, the goals, curriculum reform, teacher training and professional development, technology integration, inclusive education, partnerships and collaboration, assessment and evaluation, early childhood education, career readiness and lifelong learning, infrastructure and resources. And if the government so needs these themes, we're happy to share them with them, and we're happy to sit and help them develop them, because at the end of the day, this is about the people and the children and the future of this country. Ladies and gentlemen, I gone, and I thank you.
Good job. Thank you very much, Dr. Ronnie, and thank you very much for another very exciting presentation. And what a workout the President had this evening. He's left the podium fully fit. He doesn't have to go to the gym for at least for another 3 days. And lost a lot of weight. Ladies and gentlemen, as you realize, we've come to the end of these zonal meetings. I can report to you that this meeting had a coverage of over 300 persons watching on stream. So we have grown. We have grown over the 10 weeks, and we've grown as our message has grown, our viewers have grown, and those who are listening and understanding the programs we're talking about have grown. So we know where we have to be. We know that we have to be ready for the next phase. I know that Ronnie's not going to sleep. As a matter of fact, he's probably going to go home, and next week he's going to start the executive going again on what the next program is. So be ready. Thank you for your gracious support, your support for this evening's meeting. Thank you, Mr. Harris, for a beautiful catering system. And she obviously had a table arrangement going to, a very effective one. I think a table service. At one point, I think they were actually running out of food. So they have done well. And you have done well. You've been a beautiful audience. You've listened carefully, and I think you've understood where we want to go. God bless you. I want you to be safe in getting home. We've enjoyed your company. We want to see you soon again. God bless you. Have a great evening. Thank you very, very much.